No.
Right.
Should we talk about Conquest?
So on to fictional wars. War.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if you are on the. I don't know if you're on your desk, but BonkTable does. We kind of do a bit of the PB news. That's usually what you guys are selling or anything cool is happening. And also we do rule of the week. And as the guest, you get to pick the rule of the week. So if there's a rule you want to talk about, and let everyone know about it, and give and clear up anything about said rule, this is your chance. This is the divine mandate. Yeah.
Oh man, I know, right?
You can pick anything.
I can pick to say one thing that I was working on fixing today. I was actually working on the wording of today to fix.
Okay. What? I'm just opening up the PDFs right now. What rule is that?
So,
if I can ask.
Yeah, so actually this is a fairly simple fix, and it has to do with the way that character stands are attached into the regiments. So because the character stand is not necessity, it's not a necessity for it to be right in the middle or even to share the center of the front rank with a command stand. What ends up happening is that you can have a situation where it could be regular stand, command stand, regular stand, character stand, which then if you start taking casualties and wounds, okay, you're going to first remove the regular stand on one edge, but then you have command stand, regular stand, character stand, and then the problem is that the rules tell you the character stand cannot be assigned wounds from class or volley and so on and so forth. Command stand needs to always leave last and be destroyed last, and so you have to allocate the wounds to the regular stand, but the problem is that the regular stand is not in either side of the front rank. So where do you allocate the wounds?
I would traditionally allocate, in that instance, to that middle grunt stand, let it die, and then shift the regiment to reconnect and have the least disturbance from the enemy regiment that's attacking me. So if it's
and that would be the very correct way to go about it. But that is, that comes properly playing, that comes from experience and from understanding, how the game works, or how the game the game as a whole informs you that this would probably be the case. But these are things that you kind of have to infer, like from the way the system operates in other instances. Whereas if you make a change where you say that the character stand now always has to be in the center, or share the center with a command stand, in this same instance you would have regular stand, command stand, character stand, regular stand, and then allocation would be a lot different, a lot easier,
and also you would never run into that problem either.
Yeah, essentially by definition you wouldn't run into that problem. So this is a very viable way of approaching it.
So is that
and to address and this is a viable way of addressing that rules conflict.
Nice. So this is something you're working on currently, and then, I don't know, whenever you release stuff is whenever you release stuff. We should see it.
Yeah, so we're working on an update, for a few things for January, like for the on the new year.
I'm super excited because that's when my new favorite unit, my beloved, I'm gonna call, comes out, the Seal Temple. I'm super excited for those guys.
And they're great. They're great models. But yeah, in January, among other things, of course, like for example, so there are requests, to relook and reapproach how we discuss wheeling, reforming. Reform is a big thing,
Yeah,
right? So there are questions. It's the thing we think of the, and I hope I'm not going off in a huge tangent right now, but
at this point, it's
um,
you and I having a talk, and everyone gets to listen to it.
perfect. So it's like rulebook, and I think this is true for every war game. Every time you pick something that you want to improve on and you work on it, and then you're done and you move on to the next thing. What happens is, as you work more, you become more experienced, you learn more things, you take more feedback, you become I mean, everybody becomes better at their job, as you go, and you have to accept
Hmm.
that at some point you're going to be better than you're today, and you have to keep on improving things. So what you do is that, at least what I do, I I see I have a lot of questions about a certain something, and usually people are right. We cannot be. Um, People will always know what's wrong, because people, you can never play more games than the community. You can never you cannot never think more things than all the people playing your game.
Yeah,
So we pick this part, we fix it, and then we find perhaps a good fix or a new way to word things, and then we move to the thing that we haven't that has had the least amount of updates at, right? And so we move on always into this circle that go moving through different parts of the rule book, reevaluating how we communicate certain things and trying to readjust them to make them as accessible as possible.
yeah. So and that's a pretty. I kind of like that way because you're always developing something new, but you're always looking at your tail and making sure that it's still working. And if it doesn't, you go back and fix it so that things can keep marching on.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a live word games by virtue of being living word games, right? This is a game that you're playing for years upon years. Like, you have to acknowledge the fact that you are not today. You're much better at writing, let's say, rules or designing that than you were 5 years ago or 4 years ago. You have to acknowledge that.
Hmm.
Right. I mean, it would be odd if you're working on something for 5 years and you're not better after 5 years. All right. So I mean, you're always looking and critiquing what you've made. Of course, some things work, and so that you don't have to fix it, but you can always make things better. You can always make things more streamlined. And so, looking back at your work and critiquing it and constructively taking it apart where you need to, it's a great way to make a game better.
Oh, that's cool. Um, for the listeners, welcome to BonkTable. Mike is not with us, but I do have the great and amazing Leandros, lead game developer of Para Bellum and lore master, so that everyone knows what is going on with the story. Leandros, here he is.
Am I the lore man? Oh my god! If Stavros heard you, I will say this. I think I would be the analog of the Conquest conspiracy theorist. I wouldn't be I wouldn't be the lore master at all. I would be the person that invents like the wackiest like conspiracy theories within the world of Conquest, just out of spite. to
do you do
to
you ever
pay.
do you ever go to his
Oh yeah, my
office and like just suggest stuff? You just kind of like barge in. You're like, "Hear me out. We put the dinosaurs on trains. Figure it out," and you walk out. Do you ever do that to him?
Oh no! Well, unfortunately, I don't have that power. Here's the thing: I have nothing to do with the writing of the lore. But from time to time, there are I get these magnificent opportunities to write some things about, let's say, holiday stuff. Let's say the angry chickens. The angry chickens, my lore, and I'm like, and then it's like I get the opportunity to write stuff like that, and that's why I'm telling you, slowly there's going to be this underground, uh, all these like pieces of canon lore laid out. I'm here to shake up the system.
This
Uh,
is
We, don't tell Stavros.
this
This is
is
between you and everybody listening.
have no idea if Stravos even listens to this. Oh man, I'm just imagining it as all that like weird obscure lore. Like, have you ever played any of the Dark Souls games? I don't know. Do you even play video games?
I do. I
Okay.
do. I have played Dark Souls, but it's been a while. Like I played the first one, and then I decided that it's a little bit too much for me to casually play.
It is.
So
It is a game.
yeah. It is a game, that's for sure.
But one of the things I really love about that game is that how they trinkle in lore through like item descriptions and stuff, and you have to like um you have to refer it through how the like the world design itself. So I feel like your lore with all the little weird stuff you do is kind of like that level of lore, while Stravos is actually making actual lore, and you get to like yeah, you totally get to add in your little tidbits.
Actually, that something happens quite a lot because sometimes, a lot of the lore that is written, let's say in an army list or the descriptions of items, right? These are done by Stavros or Costadinos, right? So it's done by them. But once in a while, there's this like glimmer of hope in there. There's this little thing where something I write an item because I have like this lore thought, right? And then they like it and they let it go, and we let it in the game. Like for example, uh, Ferromat. I'm trying to think if this is in the rules or am I talking about something that I haven't released yet.
No.
So about the Ferromancer giving -1 defense, right? The
Mhm.
rule that is like that is you restrict oxygen pathways from rogue drones
Jesus.
to avoid them going into burnout protocols. And so through that, essentially, you inform the player of how burnout works in the onslaught drones, and then you also essentially by this simple item, you also inform the Spires player that them going rogue and randomly bursting up is an actual danger, that there is a protocol in place that stops them from doing it. And then you also say that this also works quite well in suppressing defensive formations.
Hmm.
And so through this very tiny little rule, if you really start reading through the words and seeing what it means, there's a lot of story that is being unlocked behind it.
So I did read some eye descriptions, I want to say like a year ago, and the one that
Mhm.
I remember is the Kiss Farewell, how it's a crossbow that kills like kings and lords, but then disappears after it's like done its job and then reappears when it's needed again.
Mhm.
And like I don't know why that stuck with me. There's other lore I've read, but I'm like that's the one that stuck because I
No,
thought that was cool.
you're right. Usually, and I think that's true for not just Conquest, but for a lot of things. Usually, it's the small things the small things that let give you just enough to let your mind roam free within that world and imagine all these things. Usually, some of these little things are more impactful than pages worth of lore.
Yeah. Um I don't know if you do this yourself when you're playing a game, but whenever I'm playing a game, it's like I want to be the like I don't know if you know, but I play 100 Kingdoms. um, but I want to be the Imperial officer. Like this is my forces. I'm on this battlefield. I'm telling the Steel Legion to get moving to go fight the Abomination. I am telling the men at arms to get in the way to block the Force-grown drones. I'm telling the Mounted Noble Lord to shut up and get his household knights into the side of those brute drones. Like I want to like that's how I kind of envision it when I play the game is like these are all the moments and stuff that like make it exciting and kind of turn it in my head more from just like myself pushing models across the table into like a video game like an old RTS
Yeah.
or something because I play a ton of those and those are fun as super fun.
No, but that's to me at least. That's what this is all about. Like this is when I started. Like I remember when I started playing war games. Like when I was a little kid, I started playing the Lord of the Rings game, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I've been a war gamer for about 21, 22 years, and this was like my first you know, like thing with the game. Like I would just imagine stories, like, or I would just imagine, you know, things happening while I was playing within this rules framework. And for me, you know, wargaming ultimately, and the reason we play games is because, I mean, we kind of want to zone out a little bit, you know, think and just command fantastical armies just for a second before we have to go on with our mundane, maybe some regular life sometimes, right? And for me, being able to play games that puts you into a role, or you know, let your imagination run off a little bit when you're playing is just incredibly important. Ultimately, for me, this is the reason to do this.
Oh,
Without it, without the stories behind the games, I don't think the games are as fun or as exciting.
um, you know what? I do agree with you that like there are times where it's like I really play it just to like have those stories, and then also Conquest kind of scratches a strategic itch in my head. Like my father when I was 8 introduced me to Warcraft 3, and then that was it. Like then it was just like Warcraft 3, Age of Empires 2, Rise of Nation, you know, like all these RTS strategy games, like Civilization, all that stuff, and then it got into like strategy board games and such, and so Conquest really does that for me as well, of like being the ultimate commander and like outwitting my opponent and winning the game, on top of also doing the fantasy element. So that's why those are like, I want to say like kind of what really pulls me into Conquest, what I really do enjoy about this game.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, there is the way that I think of the actually what really has informed and I think guided my approach to game design in a greater way is historical games, but not the systems, not like a specific system, but like what is guiding my game design is why do people like play historical games? If you think about it. So it's like people who find a certain era or a certain point in history interesting. There is something about the battles of ancient Greeks or whatever, right, that they find interesting. And by playing these battles, these historical battles based on this historical on this, let's say, on all of these data that we know about the era, they're trying to recreate and in a way a little bit understand a little bit what would the challenges be of a general back then in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so essentially you have a fascinating story, and on that you are trying at least superficially to put yourself in the place of a commander in that point in time. And in this way, Conquest, although it's a fictional world, in a, you could say that this is a story once again that people find interesting and they like it, and they want to try to put themselves into the place of the commander that is now, instead of facing the Romans or the Gauls or the Normans or whoever, now they're facing Spires and Dwegum, and like what it is that the army of choice has in their arsenal to fight against these enemies. And if the story makes sense, like if like in the story, you had an enemy of that has horses and you have spears, that would make sense. And so if the story makes sense, the game will make sense as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what you have to do, in my at least line of thought, as a board game designer. You have to give the rules to recreate the story, because without the story there is no game that will make sense for you to play time and time again throughout the years.
No, that yeah, no, that makes sense to me. Okay, so I have a question. When you're designing, you make the rules for the models, but do you have an idea of what Like when you make the rules for models, do you have an idea what the model roughly looks like, or know its lore beforehand? I'd assume so. You could like figure out what you're going to put on it. But when you are making those rules for those things, do you try and ground your rules in some sort of basis of like realism, so like people can still connect to it better instead of like biblically accurate angels, where it's like a weird blob with wings and eyeballs?
Okay, so I'll tell you what. When when designing an army, the question is a very simple question, and that is like, what's the story here? And I'm not just talking about what's the story in terms of the lore, but
Mm-hmm.
also what's the story in terms of gameplay. Like, what is the story of the Hundred Kingdoms? Not in their, not who they are in the world of conquest, but who they are on the table. They're a faction that has a wide range of tools in their disposal, and but at the same time you have to make sure that you bring the right tools at the right time. You are this underdog, let's say, in a sense that you're this human that is fighting against all of these monsters and all of these dark forces, and through determination, through tactics, through strategy, through and the way that these things translate in gameplay, you will try to outwit and ultimately win over your adversaries.
Yeah, no,
So there,
I agree.
right? And so that when you ask the question of what is the story of the Hundred Kingdoms on the table, you need to also understand and learn what is the story of the Hundred Kingdoms in the lore. So when we were discussing about, let's say, Sorcerer Kings,
Hmm.
we're like, what is the story of the Sorcerer Kings? Because unless we know the story of the Sorcerer Kings in the world of Ea, we cannot answer the question of what is the story of the Sorcerer Kings on the table. I cannot know what Sorcerer Kings will do in a battle if I don't know where they come from. If, for example, it wouldn't make sense, let's say, for me to put, I don't know, fully armored knight analogs into the spires if the spires never use such a thing. So you cannot create rules first and then dress them up.
Mm.
And this is, some people might disagree with that, but, and of course there are pros and cons in there. When you make the rules first, of course you can theme them in any way, right? You can explain them as you wish, but when you make the rules first, you might make a very balanced game, but you're not going to make a very engaging game, because this is more than just the rules here. As much as we like to think of it, as much as like we try to think that the game is all about the rules, it's actually about the aesthetics. It's about the stories behind them. It's about the effort you put into painting the miniatures. It's about, all the things that you were imagining when you're thinking about what your color scheme is going to be. A word game has so many parts in it that you cannot forego of all of these things and just go straight in, write rules, and then hopefully the story you make around those rules might be good enough. The rules are there to translate a story into the tabletop, and it cannot be the first one there. The story has to be first, otherwise the system doesn't know what it is translating.
So when I was getting into this game, I saw, what was it? I think I saw the Household Knight box and the Steel Legion box, and I said,
Hmm.
that looks cool. Flipped them over, read their lore, and said, I want to play this on the table. And after I got a demo game from my local Vanguard, I assembled all those models and I played Household Knights and Steel Legion in my first game because thought they looked cool, read their lore, made sense, and thought it was cool. Wanted to play them. So what you described, your rules worked. Like, not your rules worked, but like your strategy of building models based on the lore and having rules for them worked because I literally just did that.
Yeah, it's just, it's important to remember that, a war game is a means to delve deeper into a world, into this vast, lore. And many people, they may say that they're just pure gamers or they only look at the rules. But if what you're playing is not cool, if it doesn't make you imagine, or it doesn't make you wonder, or it doesn't say, oh, like, I want my army black instead of red for this and this reason, you're not going to be invested enough to stay in this community and keep playing the game. So there needs to be substance, and the only way for it to be substance is for the lore first. It needs to be complete, good, and making sense, and then everything else will come in later. So let's say the biggest example of that is that what were we thinking of Conquest? Conflicts in Conquest are a lot like medieval wars, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you didn't have perfect communication. Oftentimes, you were fighting who's in front of you, but you have no idea what is happening on a different flank. There is chaos. So to reflect that, you have the command stack. You have the fact that nobody starts on the battlefield. You have all of these items. You have all of these systems in place. But these systems are there exactly because of the theme of the game was to make it feel like a real medieval battle. These mechanisms are there as a means to translate that story and to make it and to bring it onto the tabletop. The command stack on its own doesn't make sense if if the lore was not, portraying this sort of chaotic medieval warfare.
Yeah, because I really like the artwork for Conquest, where it's just like, I think one of them is 100K versus Nords, and there's like Steel Legion mixed with Men at Arms fighting off a giant, and then there's some Crimson Towers off in the background doing like a long flank to hit it, and everyone's just like screaming and yelling and stabbing at each other. I'm like, this looks sweet.
Yeah, but
And
see what I mean? Like,
yeah,
to bring this onto the table, you need this thing that, you don't have total control over everything.
mm-hmm.
And so that's why I say that you need to get your story straight first before you start putting rules in place.
So you mentioned the reinforcement line, and this is actually a question I wanted to ask you was,
Mhm.
how did you come up with that system? Because no other miniatures game I've played, like I've played AOS, 40K, War Machine, some Kill Team, a little bit of Infinity, and Flames of War, really has that system, and I thought it was really interesting, but I'm like, but I wanted to know, like, why did you guys kind of go that way? How did you come that way? But you've kind of already explained it, why it's lore-wise, where it's kind of the chaos of battle. But this question might be more of a design reason, like you just. So how'd you guys come up with it? I'm really curious because it's something I've never seen in any other war game. And
So I'll tell you very, very. So let me think of how to present it properly. Okay, so in rank and file games, what is very important is movement.
yep.
Right? These are games that planning out your movement is crucial. I mean, regardless of game, your miniatures have to be at a certain place in the battlefield in order for them to perform a certain task. So the person who has most of their stuff in mostly the right places is usually gonna win. So then combine the fact that you don't have deployment and in order for the miniatures to be at the right places, they have to come onto the battlefield somehow. Right, they need to come in, so they're going to come in from your side of the field, but also given the fact that we're talking about chaotic medieval battles, things are not just neatly coming in from our tables sides. They're trying to flank each other. That was quite often the point. You're trying to come in from the flank, but then you have to put an extra element, a little bit of strategy in there, and you say that, okay, you cannot have regiments arbitrarily coming in from anywhere to the sides, right? Otherwise, it's not just chaos. It makes no sense, right? Okay, I cannot just bring right over from pretty much the edge of the table where your table edge starts, like from the side, because then, I mean, this is going to be chaos just for the sake of chaos. You didn't play well enough to earn the right to flank that well, right? It's not just,
You didn't earn the chaos.
yeah, yeah, like, because that bringing a regiment from there and having a regiment in the back lines is a powerful thing,
Oh
right?
yeah.
That means that you can start charging regiments from the back. There's so many things you can do if you want to put yourself in that highly advantageous position. You have to work for it. You have to earn it. It's a strategy game after all. And then if both players can do it and every single regiment can come in from wherever, then it's no longer something you earn. It's just something that happens. It makes suddenly the sides become your table edges, right? It makes no sense after a point. So we wanted a back and forth system. We wanted, let's say, a line of scrimmage. And what that line of scrimmage did is that if you want to push me back, you're going to overcommit at the cost of a regiment of yours. If you push too far, you might overextend, and I might actually take advantage of it. If you're not aggressive enough, then I'm the one pushing you back, and I'm the one actually bringing my regiments from this highly advantageous position. So we were thinking of it as a tug of war mixed with a little bit of a line of scrimmage, and then this is essentially what the reinforcement line that we know today.
Cool. Yeah, so one of the things that I'm always aware, like I always want to keep in the back of my head when I play the game, is that I did this when I first started playing, is like I would just like slam the knights forward and just be like, do a ton of work, but they'd be really far away from all the rest of my regiments. So they would kill the one regiment and then just get bogged down and eaten by a bunch of my opponent's stuff because they're too far forward. Or if I ran something to kind of be sneaky and get into their back line, if they still had regiments coming out from reinforcements, they would just counter deploy and eat the thing I had in their back line. So it was like, I do like that, where it's like, you can be aggressive, but don't be too aggressive because something might just pop up and kill you.
Yeah, and you talking about killing in Conquest, yeah, it happens very quickly, very violently, very suddenly. And this is another thing that we kind of like. It's that, and also this is a point of contention for a lot of people, that, we want to see our stuff survive, and sometimes we want to see it live for more than they would actually live, in an actual battle. The first thing we wanted to do with Conquest is that we do not want to have invincible characters. A character is only as strong as their faction would allow them to be. It doesn't matter if you are a powerful Nord Konungir who could just destroy like how many enemy warriors. If you're caught by an entire regiment, you're not going to make it out. You're not going to make it out of there alive. Like we want to have this sort of realism in that way, right? And then casualties are high because battles are bloody. They're not, an easy thing. And casualties most often happen from people trying to run away. And this is the resolve system essentially, and why you take these additional wounds trying to leave or being wounded and all of these things. And this is also how we explain of restoring stance. It's not resurrection, but it's people, getting a second wind, being able to get back on their feet, being able, to heal minor wounds that are important enough to not allow you to fight, but not enough to incapacitate you completely.
Yeah, like if I got stabbed in the thigh, I'm not really moving anymore, but if someone patched that up, I'm like, okay, I can get back into the fight.
Yeah, I can be at least competent, right? Like to a certain extent.
Yeah, but if someone
But
took
I'm
my
not
arm, that's kind of a bigger problem.
Yeah. Yeah, at that point you're out, yeah.
You get to go sit on the benches.
Yeah.
So one of the things, like, yeah, I do enjoy that your game is very killy, just for the fact that it's like, and sometimes even benefits me because I'm like, I want a regiment to be in the way, but then my opponent realizes that I want it in the way, but then when my other regiment gets set up that can actually do the work and do the damage, they'll just not kill it, and then I'll just be like, well, I'm just gonna run away and just take a bunch of like combat withdrawal damage and kill the regiment so they're out of my way, because I've done that a couple times.
Yeah, it is a killer game, and it allows for a lot of strategies like that, and it allows you for interesting choices sometimes. Do I only clash and then I charge the next target and take that gambit? Do I inspire and clash and absolutely destroy the enemy regiment, but then sit there? There are a lot of choices you have to make in Conquest, and this is personally why I like it.
Yeah, and as you mentioned with the super killy conning gear, there's plenty of times where I've seen opponents like put a super killy conning gear in 3 stands of Huskarls, and I look at it and I'm like, I'm just gonna kill the 3 stands of Huskarls. I'm gonna keep my character far away from that thing.
Yeah, and that's like but that's an important thing. It's that you're playing an army game, not a hero game, and it's important to understand that your characters are powerful, but they're not invincible.
No,
and
I do like that about the game.
Yeah, if you get caught, you're caught.
Because the character is its own stand, but doesn't count for the regiment for wounds or anything. I do like that, because as we've been talking, because I could totally see if it was part of the regiment, and if it was like a very defensive character, what just never dies, like you've mentioned, just being stuck in combat with the thing forever. Because it's really easy to make a super defensive character, except a lot of all that defensive stuff only matters for duels. Or a majority of it matters for duels. There's a couple other things that come out for the regiment that I do enjoy.
Yeah, so first of all, aesthetically, it would be very odd to just have regiments clashing against each other and then being a single individual that for some reason rules all the defense for, right? Like there's like swords and spears like flying everywhere, but somehow this one person is deciding whether they're going to be casualties or not. So yeah, they are part of the regiment where it matters, but they're not in certain other ways.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Thank you for answering these questions, because it's I want to say it's more eye-opening of like, okay, this is why you guys have this game, and like this is how you got to conclusion of things I like, or things that I'm like, how did you guys get here? Like the reinforcement thing was like, I've never seen this before in a game. How did you guys get to this? Like design this or like figure it out or what you want to do with it. So thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Like it takes designing a word game. It's something that you gain experience in, and oftentimes, the real experience is not about designing a new system. That's it might like if you get involved with it, you can do it. That's not a big deal. The real difficulty comes in understanding how to write things in a way that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But most importantly, and this is something I would really like people to know, the biggest difficulty in game design is to know what to leave out. What we want to do oftentimes, people oftentimes want to create games, and they have these wonderful ideas about how deep and complex melee combat can be, and then how deep and complex and rich their magic, and how interactive and beautiful shooting can be, and then on top of all of that, have a beautiful command part. You can have a game that has a complete of everything, but it takes 12 hours to play. So the question is, how do you give a person a complete, full experience that they have fun in about an hour and 45 minutes? And this is where the true game design skill comes in. Not in creating a game. Trust me, people that like playing games with enough time and enough feedback, they're going to write beautiful things. It's about, though, knowing what to leave out and being true to the game in terms of what it is that the game is testing. TLAK is testing strategic foresight.
Yeah.
And everything that we write and everything that we do revolves around that. Are you going to think it through and create your command stack correctly? Yes or no? And the person that does it more often is the person that is going to be winning more often. There are all these great systems that you can put into Conquest, but you cannot be putting too much in and diluting the main reason that Conquest is there, and that is to test players' strategic foresight.
Really interesting. That's a really good point. One of, like, for you making the game and getting players into it, I was really surprised when I had my first demo game of Conquest how quick it was to just play the game and to do the actions and get moving and just start doing stuff. Like, once we threw some zones on the table, threw some terrain, had everyone lined up, it was very much like, all right, roll for reinforcement. Okay, we got stuff on. Okay, build your deck. Okay, flip the card. Done. Then they went, and it was like, oh, this is just, you just go. Like, you don't have to wait around. There isn't really an upkeep phase where you got to like track all your conditions or anything, like who's on fire, who's covered in acid, any of that stuff. Like, it's very quick and easy to get into, what I really did enjoy, because I came from War Machine that was very it was an exercise of strategy, and you were basically using your full brain power for 2 hours to play a game. While in Conquest, I really enjoyed it because you used your full brain power for about 5 minutes at the start of the round to build your deck, and that was it. After that, you just drew your card and did whatever you could.
Yeah. I cannot agree more. We wanted a game that you can play in a tournament and not feel like brain dead after.
Oh, there was
like all of these things, but what you're saying like is so important. All of these things are conscious decisions, and this is why I'm saying that the most important stuff is knowing what to leave out. You can have all these incredibly detailed systems, but then is it going to be, how are you going to play 4 games in a day and not like be dead after that? Every Conquest tournament, you play 4 battles and then you're happy and you want to go eat and go for beers, and you don't feel like your brain is a mush. You can go play Magic after that, or like play board games, or keep playing. You know how many times in Conquest tournaments we had people like, once the day was over, to sit and play more? Like, have you done this in another tournament? Like, I've never had, and I've like you, I've played many games. I've played competitively War Machine. I've never played in a War Machine tournament, and once the day was over, asked the person to play another War Machine game.
No, because it's so much, especially at the higher levels.
And that's, please don't. This is not it. I loved. I think it's.
Oh, I love War Machine too. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, it's right. So this is not a critique of the system. This is more of a critique of the realities of competitive play in wargaming in general. Sometimes, even when I played in Magic tournaments, I love Magic. But sometimes when I play in like modern Magic tournaments, like my brain is mush after a point.
I have a couple local friends who play in high-end Magic tournaments, and like they travel to Vegas to play, and I'm just like, there is no way I'm playing you guys ever. Like, we've played once, and it was just like, wow, I got raffle stomped into the ground.
Yeah, but here's the thing, like, when you're working in a war game, and you have to think of organized play as well, right? And you want to say, like, is organized play an enjoyable experience for people? And like, how can I make this game enjoyable for people to be playing for an entire day and not go home and saying, I don't want to play again for 2 months? Like, this isn't what you want to do. And so Conquest is dense where it needs to be dense, but very arcadey where it doesn't matter. You have to hit, you have defense, you take wounds. You don't need additional steps. for example, or there are a lot of things that seem oversimplified or very simple, but for good reason, because these save you time from the game, and instead of having to go through all of these additional steps, you actually have time to play an extra game. And there are pros and cons to this, but ultimately being able to be more rested at the end of the day and be able to put in an extra game is more important than having a more detailed cover system for shooting, or a more detailed, or to wound like in between before hitting and defense, let's say.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. There are times where I look at Conquest and I'm like, okay, there's something more here that I'm not grasping. Like there's some rule or interaction that I haven't seen before, or I'm like, okay, there's something here. I have to just figure it out, and then I can get like that new experience or that new knowledge of the game out. Like one of them that kind of got broken open and was that I was like really surprised on was with the Imperial officers, two of his battlefield tactics, the double time and the fire for advance, and how they combo on each other. So you can move, shoot, move, move. And then if you throw that Imperial officer in Imperial Ranger Corps, so you could fluid formation. So you could move, shoot, and then maybe just like backwards move, and then on your next turn you could fluid formation like 180, shoot out of your butt, and then well, move, shoot out your butt, move away, so you can kind of kite your opponent. Like, I thought that was great, and it was just like, we can do this. Oh my god!
Yeah, I will tell you, people surprise me with the things they're able to do in the game. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know all of the things that can happen in the game. And that might sound odd, but this is the reality of creating a game. This is what I think a good game is. You're creating the solid base on which other people can create. And I think it's a good thing that that I don't know everything that can happen in this game. And I love it when I see people playing the game well, and even like showing me things. You know how many times people like have people to me, you could do this, and I'm like, what? And it's funny because I'm the person that put the words down, right? I'm the person that wrote the things that allowed this person to do this. But it's you'll be surprised.
No, like I'm not really surprised, because I years ago I listened to a guy who was one of the developers for like Ultima Online, and basically they built this beautiful MMO back in the 90s, and then they released the beta players upon it, and the beta players destroyed the entire world in about an hour. Just absolutely gutted everything from their world, like just a cancer upon society. Like, the player base will easily find anything in your rulebook faster than you. Like, there's no way you can cover it. And you're doing a good job writing as best you can in that rulebook to get the rules out to the players so that they can play the game. And then when stuff pops up, you deal with it, like you've done in the past with all the updates.
Yeah, yeah. I'll tell you what. A game designer, I feel, has to be humble and understand that you can only do so much for the game. After the point, it's the community's game, if it makes sense. You can find the great ways, or you can do imaginative designs to make a game interesting to play, but ultimately, the community will always find things that you didn't think of. They're always going to, find all of these different combinations, and the feedback will always greatly inform your decisions for future designs. Yeah. And so you cannot have a game without the community that plays it. It's one and the same. A game cannot be good if people are not playing it. And when people are playing a game, they make it better. And ultimately, this is what we should be, I think, as a member of this community. I'm just saying, ultimately, this is what we should be judging a game by, not by its current state, but from its willingness to change and be better to suit the needs of the community.
So, Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I really like I don't know how often you do them, like every quarter or every 2 quarters. I've kind of noticed for like updates to just like fix some things, add some new stuff, finalize things. Like I know whenever new releases are coming out, it seems like you guys put out the like an updated version of the rules for that regiment. I think it was like Inquisitors and the Satyrs. I forget, they're called something. I'm terrible with names. I don't know if you've ever listened to. Go ahead.
Yeah, Selini and Satyr.
Yeah. I have been told multiple times that I butcher Anathan Toys or Anathan Tois to death. So at this point, I've just accepted my fate.
So I'll help you with that. So it's Athanati, and the reason it is Athanati, I'll explain. I know it's odd. I'll tell you why. So in Greek, we have combination of vowels that make a different vowel, right? So when you have an O and an I, it makes an E, and it means that it's plural. So it's the immortals.
Athanati.
Yep.
Athanati.
And then by the same token, it's katafrakti, and so on.
Oh my god.
or satyri, and so on.
All right. Well, obviously, no one has been saying it right.
So O and I, yeah, it's a masculine plural.
Well, it's good to know. Thank you. Now I can try to remember how to say Athanati for whenever I mention them, and I will still get comments saying I'm pronouncing them wrong.
No worries, I'll back you up. Don't worry.
Okay, thank you.
I'll let them know you're right.
We should do another episode where it's just you walking me through how to say everything in this game.
So, if you want to know further, Athanati comes from the word thanatos, which means death, and the a prefix a, which means the opposite of, or the lack of. So, athanatos is the one that knows those without death, so immortal. The same way, for example, in English, certain words, let's say empathy, right? Or apathy. Pathos is what it is, and the prefix a means lack of. So apathy, that's why it means what it is, because it's the lack of pathos.
Okay.
Similar. Actually, empathy, the prefix m means too much of. So in English, you say empathy for a person that is empathetic and understanding of others. The actual meaning of the word is a person that has so much pathos, is so much into the emotions of another person that is no longer impartial. That they're no longer reasonable because they're too much into.
Thank you for letting me. Were you an English teacher at some point in your life before you became a game developer?
No, but I did teach. As a student, I did teach math and physics.
I just went through high school and then I did a college degree for civil engineering geomatics. So all I do is measure the ground.
Well, I mean, I did. My degree was more in international business and European affairs. So it's not, but I always liked math and physics, and so I liked working on it. But yeah, it's fun facts about the Greek language, and this is also something we try to do with factions that take on from other cultures. We try to be culturally correct with the names that we give in those languages. So that's why we went with Konungir, not just king. We're going with Fender. We're going with the appropriate names from the from the cultures from which we take these names from.
Yeah, and what was it? Jotnar. I believe that just means giant. Or does it mean something else? Yeah, one of my buddies, I said Jotnar, and he was like Jotnar, and he put a Y in front of it and sent me that, and I'm like, thank you.
Oh, yeah, man. It's a small tribute to all these beautiful cultures and mythologies that have helped inspire world's literature and ultimately us creating Conquest.
Well, I like it too, just yeah, because it ties it all together really nicely, and you get a good idea of what the faction's theme is from the lore that we've already previously mentioned. Look at this, all tying back together.
Yeah, yeah. That's honestly, if you have a captivating story to tell, people will listen. People will want to play it.
Um, I have some questions for you if you'd like to answer them.
Yes, please.
Okay, what are you excited for right now?
I'm excited for the coming of the Sorcerer Kings. Very much so.
Why? Defend your answer.
I'm very anxious and not. I'm very happy, anxious, excited. All of these things together, and the reason is that every time a new faction comes out, a new story comes out. Like each faction has its own story, and if it has its own story, its own unique story, going back to what we were saying before, it also has a unique story to tell on the battlefield. So that means a different way that it approaches the game, a different way in which it interacts with the game pieces, in a different way in which it interacts with their ever expanding game system, which is Conquest. And so the Sorcerer Kings are coming with a different philosophy and a different design approach to them to bring something interesting enough into this game to be worth playing.
So,
And
good.
I'm so very happy to know, and I'm so very happy to feel comfortable that we do actually have this new and interesting way to approach the game, and that Sorcerer King are so uh, polite to introduce us to when they come out.
So when what was it Project 8 for Dogs of War, Hell, and Sorcerer Kings? I will be honest. I voted for Hell. And the reason I voted for Hell was Dogs of War reminded me too much of Mercenaries from War Machine, and that was my faction, so I did not want to do that again.
Yeah.
Sorcerer Kings aesthetic didn't really grab me, but there was a couple things in there. I think they're heavy. I believe they have tiger cavalry off the top of my head, and their elephants grabbed me, and then also their character stand where it's like a fire elemental hanging out with the lady reminds me of a JoJo's meme. So those were things that I really liked, but Hell really sold me when they got into the lore blurb about the dwarves and how like just creepy they are.
Yeah, and all of these factions we'll see play once their time comes to be released. But yeah, I'm at a point right now which is actually quite interesting for me. Like, if you I like when they ask me like what my favorite faction is, I say, whatever I have on my table at that moment, because this is how I feel about Conquest. I just like Conquest. Like, I just like Conquest. And so that is, to me, it's like I'm as excited to write and design anything that I can get my hands on. So it's Sorcerer Kings, and it will be at some point Hell, and it will be sometime, other exciting stuff.
So that's really funny because the second question is, what are you playing right now?
So actually, right now I'm in between armies because a lot of the guys in the office, so I was about to change armies going into Old Dominion, but then Dimitra, our community coordinator, she wanted to start with, she wanted to play a little bit more with the Old Dominion. So because I just like everything, I kind of play what others don't, and it's easier for me because I have an army for most things, like ready at any given time. So usually I'm like this person that plays whatever the others are not playing, just so they don't get to fight the same things over and over.
No, that's really cool. Do you guys have like, I guess you have office armies where like you've
Yeah,
produced the
yeah.
models, you guys have all painted up, and you're like, we got 24 bone golems sitting on a shelf, all painted, ready to go. Like
Or
you could
maybe
build whatever you want.
12 or maybe 12 fallen divinities,
Yeah.
is- which is actually a very accurate count of how many there are right now, painted just casually sitting.
Oh my
Yeah,
god.
so there there's this oddity in the office is that we paint a lot of models to send out for shows and for our international colleagues, right?
Hmm.
To make sure that they also have a lot of painted things. And so for that reason, actually, funnily enough, we are the last to have painted minis of the latest stuff. Sometimes I'll tell you, because of that, sometimes people that have ordered them get them before I even get them. Like so. So that's funny. But yeah. But the whole point in this, in this hobby is just to make your own. Most of the times, right? So I spent a lot of time recently kit bassing hoplites with Agima to create a version of them that have cloaks. So this took more time than I'd like to admit, but I just love them and I only wanted flat sealed. So I sat down and I scraped all of them, made them fully smooth. So it was an involved, it was an involved process, but I loved it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask us when you're, or ask you, is when you're doing playtesting and you have these like these other armies, do you just grab regiments that are similar-ish, close enough to whatever you need to test for the new thing or like the proxy of, or do you guys like print out the box art on pieces of paper and like cut it out and just like stick it to the stand?
For me, I I just put stands, and I only care about having one stand representing what it is.
Oh, so
And when you
okay.
have and when you have complicated combats, it's just I spread like a single model in each stand. So when you like playtest for things that don't exist, that's what you usually do. And sometimes, to be honest with you, when I playtest, I rather not use miniatures at all, even if I have them, because sometimes setting up a lot of the miniatures takes so much time.
Yeah, you got to play games.
Right, and so like if sometimes you have to find really time efficient ways to do things, because apart from that, it is still a job. You're still, you have a days of work that you have to go through, and you have to do certain things. So you have to play complete games. You have to play in completion. You really need to go through the entire thing, right? You cannot just wing some things, because oftentimes things happen that you never noticed, and you have to be able to to go through all the steps to notice them. But sometimes, yeah, you don't want to have to put models back and forth from cabinets or from storage places, because sometimes you're testing something, and then right in the middle of the game the question is, wait, let's pause the game and set up the second table where we're gonna um, let's say explore this odd interaction that just came up, right? So you may have to pause it, and it would be so time consuming if you have to be setting up models all the time.
Yeah, if only Para Bellum had magnets that could magnetize them onto stands and sold this product on their Para Bellum store. Not a plug or anything. I I am very much the guy who realized that nickels were cheaper than washers, and
Hmm.
just went and got a bunch of nickels and started gluing them to the bottom of all my or all my bases for all my guys to throw into stands.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And these the magnetized bases, for us was an excellent way to give people like a ready-made solution, uh, and it does save up a lot of time. And something that I do want people to know, like a lot of people just glue the models onto the stands, and it's not readily apparent why that is a bad idea. And and of course, First Blood is a great reason why, but actually, the way that stands are like this, you have this round base in the square, it is like this, so you're able to rotate the model and actually have it flush, like flash contact between regiments,
Hmm.
or even being able to remove, let's say, a model or two. It gives you a lot of quality of life, because okay, your miniatures made fit, but then when you start that regiment fighting with an enemy regiment, it's very likely that you might break an arm or a weapon, and you want to avoid that. So it's always great to have the option to remove models or rotate them.
Yeah, also, I don't know if anyone has ever had Household Guard fight Household Guard before, but the sticks like to touch each other for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah. So it's not a great idea to glue them down for sure.
Also, the other thing I use those minis for is actually D&D. 100K makes great, just like human city models. Like you have them, you have all your troops you need right there.
Yeah.
I also love war games because it fills out my D&D collection for just different monsters and like guys, and it's like, oh, I need dwarves. Oh, I got a bunch of dwag. Oh, I need some weird bio things. Oh, I got a bunch of spires. Like, oh, sweet. Oh, we're up north. It's like, oh, there's the Nords. Like, I love doing that with also my miniatures. So yeah, it's fun. I have another question for you, Leandros.
Yes.
What do you think is cool that the community isn't currently jumping onto? Might be a tough one.
In terms of Conquest.
Yeah, or you could say anything. Like, it doesn't matter at this point.
So, in terms of Conquest, what I think is cool that people are not jumping into, I'll tell you, this is indeed a hard question, and I will tell you why. So, Conquest has there's the fact that Conquest has a very high skill ceiling,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a good and a bad thing. If that might not sound like a bad thing, but it does make our life a little bit harder sometimes, because what ends up happening is that people in different communities around the world and in different, let's say, places around the world play the game differently, right? So they understand the game differently, they approach the game differently. To some people, rank and file means one thing, to other people means a different thing. And so different communities have a wildly different approach to how they play Conquest. And you can see it from the list they use, you can see it from the feedback we get. Like, for example, you can have one region saying, this army is the absolute mightiest, and we had other communities saying at the Dwegum's strongest, saying that the Dwegum need buffs because they're the weakest faction there.
Oh, and yeah, no, I totally get that and see it.
Yeah, and like you can understand my surprise to hear that, or for example, we had one, that recent update where Dwegum lost Bastion and they got hardened.
Yeah, it's
if you do the math,
shit. I'll tell you that.
If you do the math, it's a side grade, and actually, number-wise, you get a little bit more millage out of the hardened than you do from the Bastion.
Yeah,
and different communities are going to approach this entirely differently. So this is why it's a very difficult question for me, is because there are certain communities that jump on things that I think are cool. There are other communities that don't. It's just the approach to the game is so different that I cannot easily tell you that universally I think people should be jumping on one thing, but they're not.
Okay. How about I rephrase this question? What is a regiment or character that you enjoy whenever you go to a faction of your choosing? So pick a faction, whatever regiment or character is something that you always gravitate to because you like it. It does whatever you need it to do. Maybe it's like something you enjoy a lot. Maybe it's not your favorite, but it's something you put up towards that spot. Would that be better? Or is it just you love everything?
Brood of Umgur and Raptor Riders. It's just
Brood of Umgur. No, that's a good one.
It's just aesthetically, it's one of my favorite models. It's a model that I really treasure. I really cherish. It's a model which originally was going to be a chieftain.
Oh,
Here's a little
okay.
bit of background story for you. So originally the model was going to be a chieftain, but what ended up happening is that the anatomy of the model did not match the anatomy of a male Wadroon. They were much slender, and so that created an issue. And so I gave the idea, why don't we make it a matriarch queen? Because her anatomy, the anatomical archetype is closer to what the sculpt is, and that's how it ended up being a female what drew on the Brood of Ungora.
Oh, well, cool. I never knew that. And see, look, you're already showing the lore guys their place by changing the lore up by the models.
Oh, trust me, no, I wouldn't know the first thing about writing lore, but sometimes you like I can feel good about myself that I've had quite a few. I found quite a few creative solution, but this is these ideas of mine are only like a infinite this what's the word, just minuscule part of the brilliance of our writers. So
Well, they give you
there's
a.
there's very little credit that belongs to me when it comes to other than annoying them.
I should, when I name this episode, it's used to be Leandros, like lore master, and then everyone's gonna get confused.
Oh, yeah, I tell you, the first thing that I'm gonna see is that if you put that title is a Stavros being like, Leandre, like what did you say in this podcast?
You know what? I'll send it to him like before it goes out, so he can review it to make sure no spoilers happened.
Yeah, that would be funny.
Oh my god. No, I know a lot of Adrune players actually really like the Brood and what it does with Raptor Riders and like the movability and putting the Queen up there, just for damage, easy scoring potential. Like I I really like that's an option in the game for the Queen, and I totally get why you go for that thing.
Yeah, and it's just everything. It's the story, it's the visuals. For me, it's this complete regiment in the sense that when I say complete, is that it ticks all the boxes for me, right? It strikes, it's fast, it strikes hard. It's if it gets caught, it's vulnerable. But
Hmm.
then there is so much movement and aggression in the poses of the raptors and everything. It really captures my imagination.
Yeah, I well, not recently. I got it like a couple months ago, but the Saint George and the Dragon, I got that
Hmm.
Founders exclusive, and I didn't even realize that it was a lady on that thing. I just thought it was a cool sculpt with like a knight lancing a worm, and I was like, God, I'm gonna build this. I'm gonna paint it. I don't even think I'm gonna play with it, like have it as a model on the field, but I am for sure gonna have it up on my shelf.
Yeah, the Founders exclusive in general, they were a line that, right from the get-go were the ideas that we wanted to do, but they were not, let's say, financially viable to make them products, to make them
Hmm.
full-on products. And so what we said is, this is the amount of copies that we can make. We can only make these many. Unfortunately, we have to price. They have to be priced at where they are. But but they're, in my opinion, at least, they're more than worth. The the design and the artistry that is involved. We want to put. This is the Founders is just a love project from everybody, from the very artists that think of them and conceptualize them, from Stavros, who thinks the original idea for the Founders, hence the name. It's just a this love project that we just sit and down and we think of this one cool thing that doesn't necessarily have to make sense within the game, and we just want to make just because we can make it.
Well,
And sorry, and I just want to say
oh,
that,
keep
yeah,
going.
and as we're growing as well, we also become more and more competent and more when we're expanding our production as well, to be able to every time to make just a little bit more, right?
No, that's really great to hear. One of the things I really like about the founders, as I want to say, like more on the model side, I and bit of the lore is that I like how as you guys have been doing them, they kind of start to look more like in lore moments of the history of the game. Like I have no idea when Saint George killed the dragon. Is this kind of current times? Is this like 100 years ago? Is this like 300 years ago? But it's a nice bit of world building, similar to the City States one. What's coming out? I really like looking at that one. I'll probably never own it, but the Last Stand, where it's like the four heroes fighting off the old Dominion like undead legion. Like you can kind of have the good idea, like okay, that was probably near the start of the City States when this lore moment happened, and it's great world building, and also they're great dioramas.
Yeah, I mean they are like almost like they are the what you say, the three-dimensional analog of writing lore blurbs for items. Like they are there to give you a glimpse into a point in in Conquest. Like let's say in this saga, in this entire saga, there are these snapshots of who the faction is and what they or some of them had to endure at some point, or some great feats, or some something that really tells you about the faction and really tells you about a significant point in time.
Yeah, I really like them a lot. Um, would you like to answer some questions about the history of Para Bellum Games?
Yeah, I'll be delighted.
All right. So, my first question is the beginning. So, how did Para Bellum Games start? Because from my knowledge and my kind of introduction to them was back in 2019, I saw the 2-player starter box on the shelf at my local game store. And I was like, that art looks pretty cool. The models look pretty neat. And then COVID happened, and then I didn't really interact with anything from Para Bellum for 2 years. And then once COVID was over, it's like, yeah, I'm going to play this game. So how did Para Bellum get their start?
So Para Bellum started probably at the end of 2015.
Oh shit, quite a while.
Right, and then this idea for a horde game, Stavros was thinking about it more and more, and he was putting himself in the process of making his first actual steps towards creating Conquest, writing some early lore, and so on. And at that point, I knew Stavros because we were playing at the same game club. We had this place that we rented privately, and then we had all of our armies and so on. We would spend our Fridays there just playing games. And Stavros was at that point doing his what you call it, his brainstorming about how to approach the game, how to become, to think about the organization that will later on become Para Bellum. And then as things progressed, he eventually came up, and there was a basic, let's say very rudimentary base for a game, and he wanted playtesters for that point. Okay. And I said, and we were talking, and at that point I was playing very competitively War Machine and other games, and I said, sure, I'll try it. I'll try the game. Fair. And so, I started playing the game, and I had questions. I had things, that ultimately, by answering them, we would have to create this full game. And what ended up happening is that Stavros, at that point in 2016, employed the services of River Horse Studio to design what would be the basis of the game.
Okay.
And then I became essentially, at that point, a liaison between what Stavros wanted and what River Horse was writing. to making sure that what we had would be close to what staffers wanted to play like.
So,
Uh,
can you tell me what River Horse was? Like, were they lore writers? Were they like game designers? Were they kind of like models?
Game design.
Oh, okay.
Game design. It's strictly game design. So River Horse would write the section would write the rules, and then let's say I would take the rules and for example, let's say the first idea that River Horse, let's say, wrote about the action system was that each regiment would only perform a single action, and then you would have to roll a resolve test to perform a second one. So that was the and so I would play the game and I would say, well, actually, this doesn't feel close to what we're thinking. What if you just take two actions to begin with? And through this back and forth, in this course correction throughout, more course correction than should, I guess, ended up what was version 1 of the game. And after that, River Horse no longer stopped working on the game. They never worked on the game, and I've been working exclusively on it since. And that is 2017.
Okay. No, that's really interesting. I had no idea that there was an entire other studio. So you've been a developer or lead developer since, I guess, 2017 when version 1 was out?
Yeah, essentially the basis of the game was not essentially after we took the game back and we went back and forth, there was a point where close to when we wanted to release the game where we started printing the first rulebooks before the actual 2-player set was out.
Okay.
And we would give it out to people in shows, to see the game and get to know the game and so on. And at that point, I was writing rules along with a lot of other things that I was to do. For example, I started designing the Vanguard program back in 2018 or early 2019. So I started setting up what would end up becoming the Vanguard program. Shout out to my good friend Andy Sparks from the UK, who was essentially our first Vanguard.
Nice.
From Southampton Sluggers, yeah. A great club. Love all the guys there. And I became community manager. I became, a lot of different things, but I was the one that was always working on the rules, regardless of whatever other responsibilities I would have with the company.
So you wore a lot of hats to get to the point where you are now. Are you? Well, you already have. Well, you don't already have, but you currently have a Vanguard community manager, if I recall correctly. Let me go check your Discord and see if he's around.
Yeah, we do have it. We have a community that we have my dear friend and colleague Yanis Lagos, who is our community liaison, and we have Dimitra Apostolopoulou, who is our Vanguard program coordinator or community coordinator. Right, and so at some point, our community was growing, and so what ended up happening is that I moved on to exclusively into rules, and product development, and I was fortunate enough to have a person that I trusted, like Yanis, to be able to entrust the process of community, community in general, the community department too.
No, that's really great, and like having someone will take care of it and grow it is a great feeling once you move from that position. We have our local Vanguard. I think we have another guy who might be looking to be. Can one place have 2 Vanguards? I have no idea. I've never looked at it.
It depends on the number of people, and we do. Every what I can tell you is that every community is different, has different needs, and so the program caters to that. And so if there's a need for two, we will be very open to.
Yeah, because I know recently the Vanguard got one of his buddies who plays Age of Sigmar to play Conquest. Dude loved it. Then he got all the Age of Sigmar players to get into Conquest, so now we have 50 new players.
Well,
Yeah,
that's awesome, man. Yeah.
so I came to the store last Thursday and was like, "Oh my god!" Usually there's like 4 to 6 of us, and now there's like almost 20. So it's a great feeling to see the game grow like that, and other players from other games are excited for Conquest and want to play it as well. Like, it's really love it.
Well, that's wonderful to hear.
Yeah. Would you like my next question?
Yes, please.
All right.
I'm here. I'm here to answer all the questions you want.
Okay. Well, if there's a question you can't answer, that's fine. Like, I don't. It might be under NDA. I haven't. You're the guy who makes everything. Are you under NDA? Did Stavros give you an NDA when you signed on? Or is this a question you can't answer?
That might be a question I cannot answer. Yeah.
See, I finally found I found the cracks. All right. What trials did Para Bellum have to get to where they are now? So was there something that was kind of like in the way? Maybe it was production. Maybe it was like rules that weren't working out, or any of that stuff that was kind of like a big point where you guys kind of hit a brick wall. And then how'd you overcome it?
So this is a great question. It kind of like lets me talk about something important here. So every game that aims towards being here for the long run, right? So every game that is planning to having organized play, any game that is living in that sense, as most war games are, when they launch, they find themselves in a very difficult to overcome loop, whereas people will tell you they don't play the game because other people are not playing, but other people are not playing because they are not playing the game. And this is an incredibly difficult loop for you to overcome. And the other thing that happened a little bit before our launch is that, do you remember what happened with Kickstarter and Spartan Games, where they took some money they had this about dystopian wars, and then all that back then. And what happened was one of the first really important events in Kickstarter history, where a company just took money to pay off debts and all that. And so the problem is that people were very hesitant, even if we never crowdfunded, right? We were straight to retail.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, the morale of the community and the morale of the distributors and the store owners in general were like that. Something, War Game is not doing well. There are all these things happening. Things are going down. Like, we're not going to be investing or trying to carry a new game. Morale was rough, and we had to persevere, and we had to sit there and show that we're alive, we're not going anywhere, and despite all thoughts towards the contrary, convince people that we were not, in fact, just another company that would exist for a year or two and then go away, but in fact, we're building the what you call it. We're building the basis for something stronger. And as we were trying to do that, COVID hit.
Yeah,
I tell you? Sorry.
No, sorry. I'm interrupting you, but I just want to say I'm very surprised that you guys made it through COVID. I'm not gonna lie, because I saw you guys in November, and I did not expect you guys to make it through COVID. Like, I'll be honest about that.
I'll tell you what. I think COVID was because it was a time of crisis.
Mm-hmm.
It gave the company and the small team that we were still there, this young team, a choice that you either really get your shit together and you make this work, or you don't. And we made it work, and we went through it, and we managed to survive because during COVID, I worked more than I've worked in my entire life. And I say this in the best of ways. It was one of the most productive periods of time for me. I needed it because I was at home, as everybody did. It was a very
Mhm.
difficult time for everybody. I needed this period of time. I I I feel incredibly proud of everybody, of the entire company, and for the things that we accomplished throughout that time. We had a critically important new colleague at that point, which is Daryl, our sales and marketing coordinator, and we managed to altogether, set incredibly strong foundations for what Conquest is now. Conquest came out of COVID stronger than it went in, and I think this is a great, this is just very rare to hear.
Oh, yeah. I was really surprised when I came back to the game store 2 years later, and there wasn't just the two-player starter box of Spires vs. 100 Kingdoms. There was a bunch of 100 Kingdoms, a bunch of Spires, Dwagholm, and Wadroon were all on the shelves ready to be sold.
Yeah,
That like
it was a
I was super surprised, and I'm like, I want to play this game.
it was a very difficult time. I'll
Oh
tell
yeah.
you, very very difficult time. But this was like maybe one of the toughest battles that we had to fight, and the most, I think, to this day. And we went through it stronger. We came out stronger, and that's I'm just incredibly proud of being able to do that.
No, like good job to yourself and the Para Bellum team. Like I'm I was really surprised, and it shows a lot of your strengths to persevere.
Yeah, I would say this would be my answer to this question.
No, it's a great answer. Um, Kudos to you guys. You guys did good. Um, Before we move on to my next list of topics, is there anything else you want to talk about the history of Para Bellum Games? Any little tidbits you want to add, or do you want to go to the next one?
I will give one a little anecdotal story. Just that I've said it sometimes, but about how brood drones came to be. Initially, we didn't have brood drones and onslaught drones. They were one thing, and they were called berserker drones. And essentially, what happened? They were brood drones, but at the size and anatomy of a force-grown drone. But one day we accidentally printed them much larger, and we liked them so much that we made them brutes and made them bulkier, and that's how the brute drones came to be.
No. That's actually kind of funny. You're just like, what if we made them bigger? But
This has been very often the question around the office, and you can see it in the tontor.
oh my god, that thing is huge. Mike, my co-host, recently bought one, and they've been putting up photos. Or have they put up any photos? I don't think they have any photos. I think they've been talking to another gentleman about how to build the thing because it is pretty big. I was like, man, this is a big ass model. Um, so I have some questions about you personally,
Yes,
and
please.
Para Bellum and Conquest. I think some of these you've kind of answered in your previous talks. Like, how did you get involved with Para Bellum? Like, you were friends with Stravos. Um, and then the other one is like, did you start as a developer? Or did you work your way up? Well, you started as a developer and wore a bunch of hats. Um, we kind of talked about.
I think so. I would
Oh,
say I think organically, I would say working my way up in the sense that being there from the beginning, the responsibilities and you know the position seemingly is the same, but this position is vastly different depending on how big the organization is. So the title you may have or your responsibilities may virtually sound like they're the same, but the more the community grows and the size of the company grows, um, if you want to be able to maintain that position, I mean, like you are in a way working your way up. So it is the amount of stuff you have to, and the way you have to approach it constantly changes, because it's like the difference of saying one is let's say a community manager for, let's say, a big a big magazine, let's say in Greece, and then
Mm-hmm.
saying community manager for Blizzard Entertainment, right? Yeah, the it's the same title, but the vastness of the organization makes it a lot different.
Changes your level of responsibility for different
Yeah.
things. Yeah, because
So to remain and be able to do this work today, and be able to put out and be able to fulfill my responsibilities towards the company, you have to grow as a person. Otherwise, you're left behind.
well, I, no, it's good to know. I think we kind of talked about this one before a little bit, but what was your process you guys have to get from concept of origin to playtest rules to final release? Well, we've kind of talked about like lore decides the rules, but I don't know if you want to walk us through your like actual steps when Stravos like drops down a bunch of papers and you have a bunch of lore and he's like, make this, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, so I actually that's quite accurate. Actually, how you say it, and with the added thing is that Stavros, he likes discussing the lore a lot. So oftentimes we'll just sit down and he will tell me what he wrote, and right when he's writing the lore, he's also envisioning how they look. And so essentially what he would do is that, okay, he tells me this, and then he moves on to the art director and to the artists, and he would say, I'm imagining this and this and this. And then we go into doing what is called explorations, whereas an artist is assigned to create, to start to visualize how that would look. And so you don't go straight for that regimen, but you go for archetypes. You go for, let's say, you start with something that could look like one way or the other. You take elements of a specific culture you're trying to go towards, and then Stavros would say, this is too much from this culture. I would like it a little bit less and more from that. Or I like, let's say, this kind of armor and this and this, and I don't like the others. So let's keep 1, 2, and 8, and let's explore these ideas more. And so you go through these series of explorations where you take out whatever you don't want, and you're left with the things that interest you the most. And so you go closer and closer to the final, to what will end up being the final concept at the end.
Okay. No, that's really good. So, as that art's being developed, do you ever make it like a rule that like you finally get a picture of the model and it like maybe it has wings or something and you didn't realize this thing had wings and you're like, oh yeah, we gotta make it fly now, and then you test it out and then you're like, ooh, giving this thing the power of flight is maybe a little too much or something.
So actually, you're not far. I never get big surprises, because if it has, let's say, something so radical as the ability to fly, I would know it from the lore.
Oh yeah, you're right. Because it would say like, and they swooped in and attacked a bunch of people.
Actually, it's not even. It's the lore that I would get. It's a straight up. It's a straight up, let's say, portrait of that thing. I'm explaining that this is this. They come from there. They fight like this. They wear these. So it's not always within the context of a story that I have to read. I'm reading direct descriptions of what it is that I'm what of, and that description has what it is, what it does, and why it is. And so it's very straightforward. I don't have to infer things from a bigger story, if that makes sense.
So you kind of got like history book descriptions of a thing, or like I guess like
Yeah,
or like the dictionary, but instead of like the alphabet and different words, it's like Strix. What do you do? The Strix is a flying thing that Spire's made.
yeah. And sometimes it's as simple as that, and you don't need to have, like, it doesn't need to be high literature. It just needs to explain to me what it is and why it is there, and the why it is important, because the why also informs me the how it is used from that faction.
Okay, no, that's really interesting. Like I've never developed anything in my life. Well, just work, but whatever. Yeah, I've never done any game developing, so it's really interesting to hear how you guys get from like like lore concept to kind of like finished design. Um, my next question for you is, what models, regiments, characters / rules you thought was not that great but turned out to be awesome?
What models, rules, or characters
Yeah,
I thought they were not that cool? Okay, let me think.
yeah. You can pick one of
Um,
any of these. I just have a like in brackets blurb.
it's a hard one. Um, Trolls from the Nords are not my favorite models, but people, use them a lot, and they like them a lot in their lists. And of course, partly to that is the rules and what they do. But it's a model that, and that's it's a matter of taste.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it doesn't really it never it never ticked my box, if that makes sense. And then in terms of rules, I would say I actually had one right now, but in terms of when we were testing internally the Sorcerer King, something usually most of these things happening in the playtesting process, where I write something that I'm not sure of, and then I just want to test it, because during playtest we just test everything. I've tested dinosaurs with like 150 wounds just for the sake of it. Sometimes, right? I mean, it sounds, yeah. If it doesn't work, okay, well, let's see it not working.
Yeah.
You have to throw these wild things in there, because sometimes you get interesting stuff out of that.
Is that why you have the 12 Fallen Divinities for the 12 Fallen Divinity list in Old Dominion? Is that the new meta? Oh my god. Don't tell me you actually tested that.
It's a fallen divinity regiment. Nothing.
Oh my god, that'd be horrifying to see on the table.
I can tell you something we've tried and we loved it, but it was too much, way too much. So an idea was for the desolation drones, that instead of they shot, and instead of doing hits, they applied decay. But then the problem is that with torrential fire, and so each hit would give you decay, let's say two or three, and then you could get hit like 12 times.
Yeah, so that thing is defense 0. Oh my god. Still amazing. Love it. But yeah, maybe a little too much.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you guys actually test this stuff out, because there's tons of times where I always think to myself where I'm like, what if they did this thing? I'm like, I wonder if they ever like thought about that, and it's like, whatever. But it's good to hear that you guys like just try wacky shit, because sometimes wacky shit comes out and you're like, oh, that's good. Sweet, let's run with this.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, most of the time, this wacky things, you do something that is crazy, and then it's like, okay, well, this is crazy, we cannot keep it. Okay, but what if we did it in a different way? And sometimes you end up finding something that works, and sometimes it's quite good. Right? So you have to not be too self-conscious, and actually just throw the wild things out there, to the point that a lot of the times the testers will be like, what am I even reading right now? But actually, what is wild at the very beginning might end up being a very interesting piece of rules at the end.
No, that's cool, man. So my next question is, what is something you're excited to work on in any of the to-be-released soon regiments in the Army Builder? So this is not Sorcerer Kings. It's stuff that we can see kind of the beta rules for, but hasn't been fully released yet. Now I'm asking for a little bit of spoilers. If you don't want to answer, that's okay. But
Mhm. So I'll tell you what. I want to tie that into something you said earlier. You said, for example, that before we release something new, there's a little bit of a rework or certain adjustments.
Hmm.
And the reason this happens is that actually, when we first start showing a new model, people start playing with it a lot more because they know it's coming.
Yep.
And sometimes we find a lot of things or some things that we wouldn't have found before, exactly because of how much targeted playing takes place around that specific regiment. So it's not a matter of, oh, something new is coming out, so we have to polish it just for the sake of it being new. A lot of the time is something new is coming out, people know, so they're maniacally playing with that regiment as much as possible. And that will inform you of a lot of things. And oftentimes, this will bring up, let's say, balance issues that you were not aware of in the past. Uh, so, and so, but overall, the things that are coming are usually already worked on.
Hmm.
And so I'm usually more like excited to work on like new factions or new things because right now there isn't something coming that I haven't worked on a while ago, if that makes sense.
Okay, so all just to clarify, the stuff that we're seeing, like it's coming out in the catalog and stuff, or even beyond that, you've kind of already done your work, but you're like because you're excited for new factions because you just get to have your playground, which
Yeah,
is
yeah. Actually, what I'm excited to work on right now is a lot more stuff for the narrative campaigns. The narrative campaigns were released right now. It's the bare bones, and
mhm.
it's part of a program to flesh it out more. So this is what I'm a lot more excited at this point because we have a lot of things we want to do with it, and I'm just excited with all the great stuff that we're going to be releasing for it.
I'm actually pretty excited for it because um, our local Vanguard got I guess the organized play kits, and in them there was like the campaign book, but it was the old one, which doesn't have updated rules for like city states and I guess Sorcerer
Mm.
King's coming out. So he gave it to me, and I read through the lore and everything, and looked at it. And I was like, oh, this is pretty sweet. And then he has the map. And what I really want is I want the map so I can put it up on my wall. But he won't give it to me until we have a campaign. So so we're gonna have a campaign on the map, and everyone's gonna draw their stuff on it. And then at the end of it, I'm gonna take the map and I'm gonna frame it and put up in my wall in my home, and with where everyone was at the end of the campaign. So I'm really excited for that. So I'm like, bring out the campaign so I can get my map.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I've talked to some members in the community who are playing campaigns, and they love it. They're like, I made an ally with the Wadroon player on my left flank. Now I'm fighting northward to fight the Spires player, and eventually I got to go fight with Dwag. And I'm like, man, this is kind of the stuff like I want to play because maybe it adds like that little bit of stakes where you're losing train and stuff, but it's also like, hey, I guess it's kind of a you get to see the world change with your actions you do on the campaign map. What I do like,
Yeah, no, that's very right. I agree with you.
yeah, and then also I get the map at the end, so
I know, right? That's always a great plus.
yeah, I have my basement is set up as like a big gaming room, and I'm gonna frame it and put it there so people can look at it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, well, we're playing. What are we doing? Playing Icewind Dale for D&D, and I'll actually just take a pen and I'll pencil on the map where stuff is, and I have one player who freaks out every time because I'm ruining the map.
Oh, well, that's the best thing, so.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna frame that and put it up on the wall once we're done that campaign. So it's like immortalized. Um, I have another question for you, Leandros.
Mm-hmm. Yes, please.
What concept / idea do you want to use as a new faction 5 to 10 years from now? This might be a hard one.
You know why this is a hard one is because we have about 23 factions that we're going to be released. So 5 to 10 years ago, 5 to 10 years from now is like well within
actually getting this out.
Actually getting this out. And so, like,
This is why we're locking it in stone, so everyone has this recording to know that you keep your word.
it's the order in which things will come out by then that it's impossible to know. But but I can tell you, I'm looking forward for a point in time where all the factions existing and new have fully fleshed out sub factions.
Yeah.
And this is really a point in time, a place that I'm really excited to bring the game to.
Okay, I have a question. I keep reading about sub factions, and my base idea is that I'm gonna use 100 Kingdoms as an example. Is that the Imperial Remnants, the Orders, Nobility, and the Church are all gonna split out as their own factions, but kind of be under the 100 Kingdoms umbrella. Is that the idea there? Like,
yeah, think of let's say having a 100 Kingdoms army list that you can play with it as you play it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right, a selection of everything, and then think of that within the same army list. There are sub army lists that tells you that you can actually play as part of the Imperial Remnants, and here are the rules for it. Here are the choices that you can make. Here's the one thing or the other, where you can play with the nobility, and here's what you can take, what you cannot take. And if you follow this pathway, these are the additional benefits that you take. So think of every faction's army list becoming this parent army list under which these smaller army lists exist.
Okay, so I'm gonna use we both play War Machine, so I'm gonna use the terminology from them because this is what it really reminds me of. So these are kind of like the theme forces from War Machine, but they're the sub factions for the faction.
Think of it more though as more regiments coming out as well. Yeah. So think of it that when sub-factions come out, we're also talking about new things specific for that sub-faction. So what theme forces do is that they take from the existing selection of the faction and they build these underneath. But what the problem? Okay, I'm not critiquing the theme.
No,
I'm saying how it translates to. Yeah. Just to be clear, I'm saying like the way it doesn't translate exactly is because we first created the the sub factions exist already, and we're slowly fleshing them out. Like we're not the concept of a sub faction or a theme usually is a game design mechanism in which you no longer have to worry about the intra faction balance of certain regiments, and instead you're balancing a group of things with each other, not just one thing with all of the other things. And that is incredibly important for war games that have a tremendous range of things.
Mm-hmm.
What we are going towards is a point in time where you buy certain regiments, let's say, that simply are only accessible within this force, or they're only or like at a certain point in time, the deist or the Imperial Remnants will become this fully fleshed out army with its own items and with its own masteries and with its own everything.
Okay, so I could be a 100 Kingdoms player, and I go up to my computer. I'm going to build an army list, and I could go 100 Kingdoms, sub-faction, orders, and in the orders, I will have Order of the Sword, Order of St. Lazarus, Crimson Towers, Order of Ashen Dawn, and then I'll have Order of the Spears, Order of the Shield, Order of the Healer, but I can only access those 3 regiments when I go specifically into that order, while if I wanted to do a general overall 100 Kingdoms, I would just have access to St. Lazarus, Sword, Crimson Towers, and Ashen Dawn.
Yeah, okay, and cool. when you zoom out further, you can have a 100 Kingdoms player, or you can have an Imperial Remnants player. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about zooming these out all the way to the fully fleshed out army list level.
Sweet. And yeah, no, that would be cool. Because like there are times where I'm like, not the times. I think when I was playing, I want to say January of this year, like start of version 2. As a 100 Kingdoms player, I was very much looking at just playing Imperial Officer Warbands, like just Imperial Remnants, because that's what was working for me at the time. And now that we got like Order of Ashen Dawn, the Wizard's a wizard. There's a couple times I played with the Theist Priest, and I'm like, man, I love this guy, but we need a couple more things for him.
Yeah.
But like, you know, I'm looking at more Imperial Remnants with the Imperial Officer and the different orders of like Crimson Tower and Ashen Dawn, and I'm building more lists that way now instead of before. I was really just bringing like 2 big bricks of Steel Legion, a bunch of Merc Crossbows, some Men at Arms, and maybe Hunter Cadre if I could get away with it, like stuff like that.
Yeah. But yeah, where I really want to get to is that ultimately, when we're talking about, you know, the concept of having, you know, sub-factions, it's not a faction that has smaller groups of a handful of regiments that make up a sub-faction, but rather we want to say that, let's say a faction has about 13, 15, 16 choices, and then every sub-faction has a similar amount. So you're actually creating a full-on army list rather than a much smaller, much more contained and restricted subgroup, which would be, let's say, a theme force.
No, I'm liking this more because one of the bits of lore I've read is like how the sealed temple work and how they're kind of like there's not just like the different orders of like Sword, St. Ladris, Sealed Temple, and Ashen Dawn. There's other orders that are like non-militant, like they're helping the people, or they're like fighting off bandits, or they're not like out there fighting major wars. They're doing all that little stuff. Like I think one of them is just literally deal with the bank. So that's actually really interesting, and like I'm kind of excited to see that stuff come out because I like Steel Legion. I like their models. I like their lore. I like how they just said no and picked up the swords of the Adamantine Legion. Like that's one of my favorite bits of lore, and I'm really glad to hear that this, like, the sub-faction is going to get expanded more. Like there's going to be more things to it because I like what their base stuff is doing, and I'm excited to see what else you guys are going to throw in there.
And there's plenty. Trust me. Trust me about that.
Oh, well. Every once in a while, there's like that picture that goes around where it's like factions that are released, factions that are easily rumored out, factions that might be. One of them was like the Famine Cthulhu faction I always see. And I'm just like, is this the Fish Gnomes? Oh, can we talk about the Fish Gnomes?
Of course, yeah.
How did you even get to Fish Gnomes? How did that become a thing? Like, what was the who made the decision to be like, the trophy will be a fish gnome, and then there's gonna be weird fish gnome stuff going on.
Okay, so it started from a meme discussion on Discord.
Okay, keep going.
Between us and the community, and we were talking about, you know, like what the secretive things and monsters for the 100 Kingdoms. And I have no idea how we ended up in the concept of like shark gnomes, would say somebody, and like it's this, the fish gnomes are like this urban legend that was kind of created in the world of Conquest. And we started talking into creating the like murder fish gnomes. I cannot even recall how that happened. And at some point we said, sure, you know, let's do something for fun. But you know, one thing led to the other, and fish gnomes, essentially.
There.
You know, this was like purely created out of the community. And then at some point, you know, when that was happening, you know, we said, well, this needs to be a trophy now, and it became a trophy.
That is great. I love how you just like took the meme and ran with it.
Same thing with the Hungry Chicken. It was a meme for the apex predator.
Oh yeah, no, I saw that one and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's kind of funny. And then you guys came out with the angry chicken like scenario objectives. I'm like, god damn it, now I gotta go buy these stupid things.
Yeah, it was fun. I had fun with this one.
That's you know what, I do like that about you guys, where it's like, hey, the community's doing this weird meme thing. Let's make a model or something that ties to it so people can have it, but it might not affect the game at all. But it's like the ejector marker is really great, the trophy is really great, but it's still around in the world kind of thing.
Yeah, the fish gnomes and the angry chicken is a model that really the community is something that the community created. And to create it in physical form is a validation of that. Is being able, you came up with the idea, the community came up with the idea, and we gave the means of making it. And so, it's a validation of that, of our relationship with our community in a sense. Because, things don't always have to be very serious. Like you can take a break. You don't always have to take yourself super serious, and this is something that we're trying to do, and we love every minute of it, and to the point that we had this conversation in happy hour about, I was joking about how often hungry chickens meet with werewolves for some
God.
reason. Don't ask me, I don't even remember. So I'm like, as we speak, preparing a piece of fun lore about it, and I'm just gonna try and sneak it into the world somehow.
Can you just go to Stravos's desk and just kind of like slide it into the papers and just see it get printed somewhere? Or, well, I guess you do it with your like narrative scenarios and such.
Unfortunately, this does not work. I have to go like covert ops when it comes to this. I have to slowly play mind games into letting me do something. Like I'm telling you. I don't know if I'm becoming a better game designer in this work, or an intelligence sort of like agent trying to spread misinformation through lore. I don't know but you have to have fun every now and then.
You already have the concept for your Bump in the Night faction with the fish gnomes murdering like fishing towns on a bad storm.
I know, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like it's there 5 to 10 years from now.
Yeah. That's one thing. Then I'd love to see that. Then.
Oh my god, this is. I'm now I gotta stick with this game for 5 to 10 years to make sure this happens. I have to be there. Yeah. All right. Final, or not final question, but anything else you want to talk about, kind of like with all the previous questions I've asked about like rules and concept and some game design? Any of that stuff you want to add on or anything?
No, just that we will see. Email me all the random things that we want to see in the lore, and God. I will try to. I'm the people's the people's champion for odd and obscure lore in Conquest. So
the people's lore master.
Yeah, right. That would be the people's lore master, not the actual.
You know what? That's gonna be the title of this episode.
The people's lore master.
Yeah, you're not even a game developer. You just make lore for the company now. All right. Any spoilers you want to give? That I have 3 last well, I don't have 3 last questions, but I have 3 last dashes on the short Word document I made, and one of them is any spoilers you'd like to give.
Spoilers.
Can I ask for a specific spoiler?
Go for it.
This is going to be far out there, and you probably don't even have anything made for this yet. But can you run an all-dwarf army for the faction of Hell?
Define dwarf.
You get to use the 3 nasty little dwarves as your, I
Yes.
guess, as your leaders. Or can you run
It's a yes.
an all salamander army? Because that was my next one. I wanted to run a bunch of lizards.
Salamander, as in like a draconian shape of,
Yeah.
like, or as a gargoyle shaped.
Lizard as in a draconian fire breathing lizard, either the big one or a bunch of small ones.
So I'll be quite honest with you. It is like the development is not there yet for me to be able to say yes or no to that. Like, it's not, even if I wanted to spoil, I don't have the briefs to. I have not seen like briefs that could let me spoil anything, because I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know about that either. But I do know that there is a strong draconian like element and essence in there that I can tell you for sure.
Sweet. That really, I'm just excited to play with like lizards.
I feel you.
Yeah. But back to the real question: do you have any spoilers you'd like to share with the listeners?
Sorcerer Kings, of course, are coming, and that's not no spoiler. People knew that. Let's say that we have delved deep into the mythology around the cultures of the Sorcerer Kings.
Ooh.
And we are going to see a strong presence of the elements in the faction. Specifically, we're going to see mythological and analogs of demons and beings from the elements of fire and air.
Ooh.
And that will be my spoiler.
I'm excited because I remember looking at the concept art for the fire elementals in the Sorcerer Kings, and I thought they looked sweet. So I'm excited that they will be kind of out there sooner rather than later.
Maybe sooner.
Yeah, next year. Is there? We've kind of hit like 2 hours here of chatting. Is there? Are you good? Do you want to talk about more? We can talk about Dark Souls and video games and stuff.
If there's anything regarding Conquest, of course, I'd be more than happy to make sure that I get everything in, and then I'll be happy to.
I think we've covered way more than I even thought we would even be covering. Truth be told, the only thing I know for normal BonkTable layout that we didn't cover was Para Bellum news. And usually I just rattle off stuff that's like on your store or things that are be coming out soon. I'll just shoot this one off. So for the listener for Para Bellum News, there is a bunch of holiday supercharged 1-player starters and a 2-player starters. So there's 1-player starters for every faction. You get the starter box plus another regiment box, and then the 2-player starter is Wadroon versus Old Dominion, and you get the 2-player starter plus 2 regiment boxes. And these look like really great holiday deals for friends and family. And what else do I have on here?
The First Blood deals specifically are just incredible. The 4999 entry point to the game makes it very, you pick it up and you plug and play, and so that's very exciting. It's very exciting for us as well.
Yeah, no, I found that a $50 buy-in for a miniatures game was kind of like that sweet spot of people wanting to play the game to see if they like it before they buy in more, but it's not too much to start where they're like they don't want to buy at all. So I do like that.
And it's always it's always high, like really high in our priorities to make the game more accessible and cheaper. And so, for example, this is why we've we've started an initiative of trying to change a lot of the characters to plastic, and we're going to be able to do them, all of them, at some point. We also, you're going to notice that throughout the updates, we've removed certain officers from the game because officers are, they're expensive for people, and they don't necessarily, they, if they have to choose between buying an officer or buying more miniatures, they'd rather get more plastic miniatures, right? And so we're cognizant of that, and so you'll see that we're trying to make the game cheaper where we can, making sure that you don't buy things that we don't really, you don't feel like doing it, and that's very important. Conquest is about community, and community is about accessibility. Without those things, it's just we cannot be around if we don't make the game accessible. It sounds so obvious, which you would think that a lot more would think that way, but
well, there's other examples, like if you go to your local gaming store and you just walk through the miniature sections between all the different games and just start looking at their like starter product and what you're getting. I was doing this with some buddies where we were like looking at the different starter products for different games, and it was like, you get a lot for the 1-player starter box for the price for Conquest. And I'm like, this is how you do a 1-player starter box. And I'm also really glad about that 50 price point First Blood one, because that's super easy to get into.
Yeah, I agree. So. I definitely agree, yeah.
So, is there anything you want to plug before we kind of sign off?
Yes.
You can say anything you want.
So, a few things. One is, if there are ever questions about the game, the rules, and so on, you can always reach me directly at rules@parabellum. I was about to say dot, but I said it in Greek. Sorry, rules@parabellum.com. Sorry, rules@parabellum.com. These emails comes to me. So this is something you people that send questions, they have direct contact to me. It's incredibly important, we feel, as developers, to be speaking with our audience to the best of our ability and communicating with our audience. You can join our Discord, and our lovely family of Vanguards and us are there to answer any question you might have to the best of our ability. And honestly, play Conquest and have fun with it, as much fun as we had creating it. Ultimately, it's a fantasy game there to travel you into this wonderful, fantastical universe of Ea. And so we're here to make it, together we can make this game the best game we can. So play Conquest would be my plug.
Play the game. It's a good game. That's why I play it. Can you send me the email link, and I'll throw it in the description below for you, so that when people when people listen to this, they're like, "Oh, is it easily accessible?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's in the description." I will put it there. I'll also throw in the link to the main Conquest Discord. For my closeout, BonkTable's got a Discord. BonkTable's got a podcast. BonkTable does lore readings. I want to give a big thanks to Leandros for coming on today and chatting with me, answering all my questions about the game, about the history of Para Bellum, his involvement, how he got to where he was, all the trials and tribulations, rules and models. Like, dude, I had a blast. Thank you.
No, thank you for having me. It was a real pleasure. It's always a pleasure, doing these and talking about the game, talking about the history of Para Bellum, and it is a blast because there's just so many things that have happened, to make this game, bring this game to life, and being able to have these discussions, to be able to be this transparent, answer as many things as I can, just makes me also feel that I can, be closer to the community. So that really helps me, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you very much. I would gladly do another one of these with you.
I'd be very happy.
We'll find something else to talk about. Maybe it'll be lore. Oh my god. You know what? We can bring Stravos on, mute him, and just talk about lore, just watch him be frustrated with us.
Oh, he will love it. He will
Oh my
love it.
god.
The only thing you have to do is like make it seem like there's something wrong on his end. Like, oh, I can't. Oh, what's that? While I'm still going.
Maybe. Oh man, I gotta message him about it because I think that'd be a great idea.
That would be a great April Fool's episode.
Oh man, So here's the thing: Mike and I are planning an April Fool's episode, and by plan I mean we talk about dumb shit we want to do, but we keep forgetting them. Like I think there was one where we're not even going to talk about Conquest; we're going to talk about everything else, so it's not even about the game. But that would be a really good one. Just messing with him for like an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Oh, dude, yeah. How the Hungry Chickens are like the core, critical to the history of the world of Conquest. Yeah.
You know what? There's probably because there's like 3 angry chickens, and it's one is balance, the other one is destruction, and the third one is creation. And them fighting is why we got the 4 werewolves of conquest, war, death, and famine. The dumbest shit. I do like talking lore because I do like world. Like I read a lot of books, and I always like reading lore is just reading books and blurbs, really.
No, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Should I let you go? I'm pretty sure it's pretty late where you live.
It's fine, but yeah, but it was again, it was just I'm very happy, to have these conversations and just chill. I'm just sitting on my couch, having this. It feels like we're just chatting, like over a beer and just casually. So I really enjoy these discussions.
Perfect.
It really, sometimes when we're talking about these things, and I go back and remember, of these things and how everything came to be, is just makes me realize as well sometimes how fast time goes by.
It's nice to reminisce, and a lot of it was like I've gone into Conquest, and I'm like, okay, how is the company formed? Like, how did they get to here? Like, who had a crazy idea to make this game, and like, how did they do it? Like, what is it? What is that? You told me it was like River Horse, studios.
It was Alessio Cavatore's company.
Yeah, like I had no idea that there was another company that did the base like beta rules for Conquest before it even got out to market.
Yeah, if you notice in the credits, it says base game by Alessio Cavatore, and he was the person that started working on back in the day, and yeah, and his so he came up with original concept and the original rules, and it was back then between the River Horse was, at least the people we were working with, was Alessio and Matthew Ward.
Okay.
And so these were I'm not sure, we haven't spoken with River Horse for years now, so I don't know who works and who does what there anymore. But that was our original contact with them. And then after a point, once their obligations were fulfilled in the sense that they gave us a functional, and I'm choosing my words very carefully here, functional game, we started developing it further internally.
Yeah, I could easily see getting the foundation down to be probably the toughest part about game design, because you're going to build everything off of that foundation.
Yeah, today, like it is, let's say, it is hard in the sense that you have to have a very structured mind, which you develop if you work with rules for a while. It's funny working with rules and really trying to be very thorough with rules changes the way that you think in general. because your thoughts now need to have a very complete beginning, middle, and an end. Because in the game, okay, you're saying, "Oh, I want this to do this." Okay, but then the question comes of how, and you have to be very good at breaking down a concept and explaining it.
Okay.
Because the person reading it will need to learn how to recreate those steps.
Yeah. Well, now I have a question. Like, is there ever a point where you use your foundation, you build on rules, and then you kind of hit I guess a wall or a snag where it's like, and you look back through the entire chain, and you're like, crap, I gotta fix the foundation. What now affects is a bunch of other crap, and you're like, oh no. Like, have you ever hit that point while making rules
Oh
for this
yeah,
game?
often. Like for example, the version 2 where wounds move to the stand instead of the model. Like before that, you had to change and adjust the wounds in increments of 4 or attacks, and that was highly dysfunctional for the game. And so the very structure, the very mechanism on which, how wounds are allocated and all that had to change. And that was the change to go from on a per model basis to a per stand basis.
I do like the per stand basis more than the per model
Yeah.
one. Like, the per model one feels like, okay, each individual guy does a thing, but like, they're all on the stand anyway. That was very self-contained, and like, I totally agree with how that works and how it's changed it. Because I remember, I believe it was Reese was talking about it, where it really lets you guys like just adjust a number or two instead of like base
Mm.
4. What was like, I think one of them was
Yeah.
Dragon Slayer's getting 2 wounds each, so each stand had
Yeah.
8 wounds, and it was like, now you're chewing through a lot of wounds to kill stuff.
Yeah, but now you can just go with 6 wounds and you're fine.
Yeah, or
You
you
know,
can give Wadrun and Dwag 5 wounds, and it's like, my Merc crossbows only deal average 4 wounds, so I'm not killing off an entire stand. So that's like extra durability. What I like, what also represents the lore, and I don't want to say mythos, but like, gets to feel that faction down really well. Like, they're going to be more durable in the health department to add to natural toughness compared to the regular guy.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very
Yeah.
much, Leandros. I don't know unless I don't have anything else prepared.
Well, it's a fun place to work. It's a great job to have. It's not a job that you get to play all the time, so that's sometimes you have so many things to do that you don't get to play enough. It's it's very fulfilling to see how we moved on,
Mm-hmm.
how we moved on with things, and it's just a pleasure to work here and to work with Para Bellum and all of the wonderful people that work there. I've had the great privilege of working with great artists, sculptors, and 2D artists, and learning about art. Like, I've had the opportunity to learn about things that I've never involved myself with, so that was incredibly important. And I'm incredibly thankful because of that.
Oh,
But yeah,
that's really cool.
it's a great it has been a great trip.
No, thank you for sharing it all. You mentioned you don't get to play often. I assume there's local like clubs or stores in Greece and Athens where you live. Do you ever like just show up one day and you're like, "Hey, I'm here for Conquest night," and people are like, "Oh, let's play," and they don't know you're the developer of the game, and you're just like, you kind of have like your hat and like glasses with a mustache on, just kind of blending in.
So in Greece, we're a very small community, and everybody knows everybody. So it's in Athens, so you cannot really do that. And the problem is, and this is something that our playtesters are slowly learning, and in a way perhaps they were not expecting to, is that in this line of work, the more visible you are, the more flack you're getting. Like, this is not a job in which you're going to get a lot of abuse, and unfortunately a lot of it comes my way, and a lot of it comes towards anybody who seems um, anybody who is active in a game. You'll get a lot of very nasty messages from people you don't know. So oftentimes, to recharge your batteries, it's incredibly important to take a distance yourself. Um, and because people, and this is not from people that are usually part of the community. They're just people, who, internet is internet.
Yeah,
But
it's a wild place.
yeah, it is indeed. And so oftentimes that makes, the interaction it's very hard for me to go out and game in the way that I did before, because everything, like, you cannot just chill and just play a game usually, and that's very unfortunate.
No, it's a little sad just because it's like you made this game. Like, I don't know, if I was in your shoes, I would like to make the game, and then if I have downtime, I would have the army I play or whatever at my home, and then I would take it to the store and play the game at the store. But everyone there would know me, as you said, and it'd be like I'd probably get bothered while I'm at the store playing the game. I'm like, guys, I just want to play I just want to push the models, please.
Yeah, and it's not bothered in the sense that, oh my god, he's like that's not it. It's mostly it's a constant state of, not even it will be like people, uh talking about the industry, talking about this, talking about the others, but which is all in good faith and all in good spirit, but it's hard to just call up a friend and go somewhere and play a game. And it has become increasingly more and more difficult. And right now, the best case I can get is going to a private club, or like to a store of somebody that I know, and you can go to a private place and just play a game with people that you know. Otherwise, it becomes very, either people that want to get a job in the industry, or other people that want to learn
Okay,
things,
yeah.
and you get this constant, or people that just want to tell you how everything is wrong, or people that just, have this great idea, which it's all good and fine, but it becomes very difficult to also have to do this in your own personal off work time,
Yeah.
because you need to have this. Yeah, and also, like, my personal time, I spend in, like, in things that are completely unrelated to wargaming, most of the times when I'm not gaming. So, so that's
No, I get that a lot. It's actually kind of funny. There's I know one guy who, what does he do? I believe he worked at Ubisoft, and he was in charge of making the sound design for one of the, like, 29 or no, probably 2021, like, hockey. Like, no, he wasn't Ubisoft, it was EA. It was EA hockey. And he's like, when I'm not working, like, he's like, I'm out doing hiking, I'm out doing all these other things, and the only game he plays outside of making sound design for EA hockey is World of Warcraft. Like, that's it. The rest of the time he's like out there doing stuff, like physical activities, because he needs just to disconnect from it all.
oh, dude, like, I like, little known fact about me. I am a dancer and a tap dancer,
Oh, I had
and
no
I
idea.
compete I compete internationally. And the reason we're having this call today instead of previous days is because I just came back from Bulgaria, where we have it's called ILHC, the International Lindy Hop, like, championships, which we did great. 5 divisions, won 2,
Nice, nice.
and that's my that's the other thing that I do in my life, which is, it has created a very healthy balance, and actually made me a lot better. It made me a lot better in my job as a game designer. It might seem odd, but it changed completely the way that I can interact with people, and the way in which I can try to be creative within this.
No, that's really good. Like my job is I'm working in the oil sands industry in Canada, and I fly drones to map the mine because people want to know how much oil they've dug out of the ground because it's just sand. And so I'm completely removed from like Conquest or any miniatures game or any video game, and usually I have about an hour before I go to bed at the end of the day where I just kind of like relax, and I do that for 2 weeks, and then I come home and I have 2 weeks where I'm like I don't do any of my work, so it's just I'm gonna go play games of Conquest, I'm gonna go paint some minis, I'm gonna go record this podcast, make some battle reports, all that stuff what I have for hobbies. I'm gonna go out and canoe, like I don't know, all the things you do to get yourself away from work.
Yeah. And that's
good to have.
that's I know, right? Yeah, and that's very important, and that's very important to me as well because to people that are playing TLUK, oftentimes to a person playing Conquest is their hobby, but when you are officially representing that game, you are also part of their hobby, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
And so when I meet people during the time where they're hobbying, it's very difficult, for them to disconnect from the fact that, oh, if I'm playing Conquest as my hobby right now and I see the guy that makes Conquest, right, it's obvious the connection that, oh, it makes sense for me to get all the information that I can get because that's my hobby. But it's hard for me to, and this is where that difficulty in playing publicly is created.
no, I totally see that. There's what was my girlfriend doing? She got a job as like freshwater research for the summer with the university, and she was talking to her boss about how I fly drones, and they were thinking of like getting me to go fly a drone and take like video and photos of their ditches and small ponds and stuff, and I'm like, guys, I'm on my days off. I want to play video games.
No, you're very right. Like you're doing this like how many hours a week already? Like you're doing these full time. You don't want to do this like randomly as well.
Yeah. Like I don't mind. I wouldn't mind like, oh, whatever, one shot here and there. But if it was, you now have to go out every day and do your job during your time off, it's like, okay, this is like I'm literally removed from my home for 2 weeks at a time, working 12-hour days every day until I get home. There's some things that pile up that I need to go resolve before I can be a person again.
Yeah. No, I understand you completely.
Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I can hear you now. I lost you. I heard this metallic sound, and then I lost you.
Oh, okay. I will make a note to... Yeah, I'll say 229. Lost audio. Okay, cool. I just have a notepad where I literally just write down timestamps when stuff I have to like... Oh, there was a burp or I dropped something, like little shit like that. Just delete it out.
Yeah.
It makes the editing process super quick instead of re-listening to everything.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
True.
Man, the first time we did these, I would listen to everything, and now I'm just like, I don't even care anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So my question was, when I guess like you have your work time, do you go and this is a little like tooting my own horn or whatever, but like, do you ever go out and look at what other people are making content for your game about? Like, I know Play on Tabletop. I remember watching one of their videos a year back, and they were like, we got all these models freshly painted from like Para Bellum, and they're beautifully painted models, and they're playing games with them. Like, do you ever go and watch any of that stuff just to like see what's going on? Because now you have a visual of people's games.
Yeah, I watch and listen to every piece of content and podcast that I can, and I'm not joking about like in the sense that I have about 2.5 hours of commuting to work, back and forth from work every day, so like that's plenty of time for me to catch up, on the things that have to do with with the game on that front. And yeah, and oftentimes I hear what people have to say, and sometimes they have to say some very good things, and I'm like, okay, that makes sense, and I have to keep that in mind. And so, like, content creators, sometimes, like, I think content creators sometimes can create a little bit of buzz just to hype things, just to hype people to watch the piece of content. But within all that discussion, you can get a lot of critical feedback. Like people, because often, people, as content creators, they're echoing what people think about something, and that's very important. That can be very powerful source of feedback.
Oh, well, that's good. Well, it's not good to know, but it's like I'm always curious and wondering about that. I'm like, do the developers watch this stuff? Because one of the ones is I watch like Warhammer stuff. Like I don't even play Warhammer anymore. I haven't played since like 2017, but I still watch and listen to Warhammer content and what people say about it because like you, I travel for work. I travel while I'm at work. I'm usually sitting at a desk for like my first 5 hours of the day, so I'm listening to something as I plug away on the computer. Um, and there's times where I'm like, maybe the developers should just listen to this just to like see where the community's at. Like, and it's also like easily consumable because all you gotta do is listen, and you have a great way to do it because you drive. But also, I assume you listen to other stuff. Like sometimes when I'm driving, I'm listening to like Critical Role because I enjoy their D&D.
Hmm. Yeah, no, actually, for me, it's even better because it's a train ride.
Oh,
So, yeah, I can even watch the videos. That is that is quite convenient. But yeah, it's also like part. It's also part of my job to
oh,
keep an
okay.
eye and to be cognizant of the people's perception of the game, what people think. It's yeah, like writing rules or developing a product is a multifaceted like thing. You have to be aware of of how the game or how something is being perceived, and that will inform your future designs.
So
It's incredibly important to do it. If you don't do it, you're doing yourself a disservice.
so okay. Now my next question is: has there been content or yeah, has there been content that has affected your design decision? That'd be my next logical ask.
It's never as I don't want to say dramatic, but it's not like I'm gonna see something and I'm like, oh my god, I have to change this now.
Oh no, the sky is following. No, that's really good to hear because it's like I'm happy that you look at it, but I'm also happy like you don't just run over and change everything because of it because it's like, ooh, that could be really really messy really quick.
Yeah, no, I'm like, here's the thing. I accept the following. I accept that people have an opinion. I accept that people may not agree with one another. I understand, like, a person may think one thing, but I may disagree. There's oftentimes there is, future things coming, or there is underlying problem. Let's say you can be watching a piece of, let's say, content, and that content to say, oh my god, I don't understand why they're doing X or Y, and making it appear so easy. But yet, if you were to know the complexity of certain things, you would see that it's actually not that easy. So right, so it's not. I keep like I keep a healthy distance from that in the sense that I take it. And what I usually do is that I hear a piece of feedback, I note it down, and then I leave it to the side and I read it again the next day. And if it makes sense to me, then I will consider it and see. And like, for example, you know, uh, these are usually smaller things. Like usually the things that I take from content creators is mostly this section of the rules need to be explained better, not things like, oh my god, I have to redesign this regiment.
No, usually the regiments are like, I found usually the regiments are like, if they're like, I don't want to say like, hey, I'm talking to lead designer. Oh, your game's bad. No, your game's not bad. I'm playing it because I fucking like your game. Usually when there's a regiment that's like maybe an overtuned, like there's still a way to beat that regiment. It's just maybe you got to get your knuckles bloody a little bit more hitting that wall than you probably would with something else. Like, I usually find them all pretty good, and then you guys usually handle them if they're getting maybe a little too much. What I do like to see from you guys. But I'm also glad that you look at the rules and stuff, because there's been times even in the videos I make, there's people are like, you got this rule wrong, this is not how it works. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, like, thanks for letting me know. I'll get it right the next time.
Yeah, and usually, this is mostly the most important things I can take from content creators is that if a content creator makes a mistake on something, or if, let's say, content creator comments on something, yeah, how does this thing work, or how does that other thing work? It's incredibly important for me to see what they think, because then that might mean to me I have to explain something better. So these are the kind of things that I take from, content creation. And of course, because, sometimes when people are saying, oh, this is bad or this other thing is bad, usually there is something underlying, something hidden behind that. But yeah, to ease your thoughts, I don't just read something and I'm like, oh my god, this needs to change.
No, I actually kind of like your way of doing it, where you write it down and then check it the next day, because then you removed yourself from your initial reaction to it, and you give yourself an entire day to maybe like mull it over in the back of your head, and then you relook at it, and then you can give yourself like a proper assessment with maybe like probably a clearer mind.
And this is what I do with playtesting as well. When I give playtesters like something new, I tell them, let's say I give you something today, Tuesday, right, or Wednesday. What day?
Well, I guess for you it's Wednesday. For me, it's Tuesday.
Yeah. For me, it's Wednesday. Let's say I will tell you, here's some new rules, and it could be quite a bit. I want you to read them and give me some feedback, let's say during the week, like Monday, weekend, whenever you want, like just a few days later. But I don't want you to give me game feedback. I just want you to read it, and I want you to give me your gut reaction. And usually this is going to be very, oh my god, like yada yada yada. And then once that happens, I'll tell you, okay, then let's take 2 weeks and start playing games, and let's see how that goes. And usually, exactly because the gut reaction is usually a lot stronger, and we haven't really taken the time to look at all the facts. I try to get this out of the way quickly before we get to the actual testing. And being cognizant of that, I try to do the same thing with the way that I handle comments and feedback. That I see it, I write down the things that are important, and then I go back to them the next day and reread them. And if they still make sense, then I have to investigate further.
Okay. So you know what? There's something that I've been doing on the BonkTable Discord that I don't know if you know this, or is whenever you mentioned that not mentioned, but like one of the plugs you did was your email for the rules. As I really encourage people to post their email, like ask their question to you, you reply with an answer, and then post that in a channel we have in the BonkTable Discord, what's like the Devarata channel, so we keep track of all those, like the rulings from you or Reese? Is it Reese or Rias? I always forget.
It's Reese.
It's Reese. Okay, from you or Reese, because it really it helps people, and it's like, hey, this is what he said about this ruling, just so that we can have it like kind of on like a poster board for people to understand the game better. until it gets updated later on in like either an edition change or like just an update to the rules themselves whenever those come out. Like we've been doing that.
So that first of all, that's excellent, and thank you for doing this for your community. What we're preparing right now is a restructuring in the way that we present rules in general. And part of this new system will be a place where the FAQ is no longer going to be a document that needs to be updated and published. Instead, it will be a living part of the website where every time we take a question, we just go to the website and write it in. And so, we build this library of questions. And further down the road, we want to also break down the rules into smaller sections, into coded sections that you can go and reference, and underneath a section, if there's a relevant question, for it to appear, a little bit like how Magic the Gathering does it.
Oh yeah, there are some cards that have massive sections.
Yeah, so instead of necessarily having to go through an FAQ document or looking for anything, you can just go to the part of the rules where you have that question and just read the rule, and then underneath see the rulings or any FAQs about them. So we're still working on exactly how to implement this, but we want to create a solid system to make this happen.
No, that's fantastic, because then that means I don't have to track these anymore, because a lot of the time it's me going through the Discord, asking people for emails. I think I've even emailed you yourself one time for one of them. And then like compiling them all, or other people doing it, because it's like I just leave it open so anyone can throw stuff in there, and then if there's any chatter I delete it, because it's like keeping it contained to just the relevancy of the erratas. And if people want to discuss the rules more, it's like, goes to the rules channel and talk about it. But having your own is I really like, because if you guys implement a search bar, like filters that out really quick, and I can go find the spot I need to look at.
Yeah, it's needed, and it's part of the modernization initiatives of our apps and our systems in general. We're trying to always up people's quality of life in terms of their Conquest experience.
No, I really like that. So back to the topic at hand. So your quality of life changes. I actually really like these. Like the army builder on the website, I didn't mind. I was like, oh sweet, it's free. I can look at rules. The one thing I really liked about it was once you hit that PDF button, it gave you all the rules relevant to your list. What I really enjoyed, because it was like when you learn a game, you kind of want the stuff relevant to you for the thing you're playing right there, and now it's just like on the next couple pieces of paper was really nice. So learning the game with that was really good. And then you guys made the app where I was like, finally, because now I don't have to go to the website and kind of fight with it. And now it's just on my phone. And I really like the app.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a long time in the making, but we're happy because it is very streamlined.
Yeah, and one of the things I do like about it that a lot of other apps for a lot of other war games have kind of fallen behind on, I've noticed, is that you guys don't have a list limit. Because there's times where I just want to try. I want to build a list for a concept, and I build it. I look at it, and I go, okay, but what if I change this? And then I build another. Like I build it again, but with the change, so I have both of them kind of side by side, because I might play that variant or not. As I work on the list, I can see like where I started and my growth to where I'm gonna get to and play as I've figured stuff out, or as I've played games and redesigned the list itself through gameplay. So it's just really funny, because like you would think unlimited lists would just be available, because it's super easy to make a list.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. They're just we just wanted to make the most usable app we could make, and so yeah, that was just that had to be part of it.
Yeah. Can I ask, is there anything else you guys want to add to this thing? Because, like, tournament, narrative, payroll, I gotta use that eventually when we do our own narrative campaign locally. My list, prepare for. I like browse faction just so I can like look through stuff really nicely. Like I think that's a really good one instead of like you have to build a list to like look at stuff. Are you ever?
We want to add.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
We want to add collection. We want to be able to share lists and immediately be able to see what you got from that list or not. Yeah, we have a number of things that we want to add ultimately.
Okay. Are you ever gonna put the rule book in the app? Like instead
Yes.
of okay.
And this is going to be part of the modernization of how we present the rules.
Sweet. I do really like that the rules are just free online. They're easily accessible to grab. And you can read through them. Like I was on night shift last year and there's nothing going on. I literally sat and read the entire rule book in the middle of the night on my shift one time because I was like, well, I'm learning this game, I might as well read all the rules for it. And
yeah.
And it was just like it was really nice because other games like you might have to buy like a book or something and then read all the rules, and this is just like, oh, it's just online, sweet.
Yeah, we don't want people to be paying for rules. Like pay, get miniatures. We don't want people to pay for rules.
You know what? So I have a library at home and I read a lot of books. Are you guys ever planning to write full novels and have them so
Yes.
you can physically? Oh, sweet.
Yeah. There is just there are a number of things that we want to do and we're going to be doing for sure. The only limitation is, as with every company, the resources and manpower at any given time.
Yeah.
But yeah, we want to do all of these things.
What is it? The triangle, time, money, quality, and you can only pick two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's that is truly the case.
Yeah. I'm really not surprised, but it's just it is really all the case, and you kind of want to produce the best thing you can produce. Do you have any questions for me?
If you should I make it a hard one?
Dude, I asked you a bunch of hard ones. You can ask me any question. I will answer honestly.
What is the one thing, like from the top of your head, or the thing, or actually no, what is the thing you dislike the most about the game?
Oh, fuck. Well, if this was in September, I would have answered Dweg Home. And the reason for that would have been, well, I did a whole fucking episode on it, but basically they were overtuned and they need to be brought down. Currently, the thing I'm kind of hitting a weird roadblock right now in terms of list building, in that I'm more lean towards a competitive play style because that's just the person I am, because I'm like, I want a strategy game that gives me a lot of depth and options. What reminds me of the real-time strategy games I played when I was a kid and even still play now. So as I play the game more, I start to systematically remove regiments in the roster for the faction I'm playing that are useful for me to win. So I like in a game where like 90% of the roster is playable and I can pick and choose all these different things. However, as the game goes on, and I don't know if I'm getting better or like I'm finding the tools that I reach more towards to be just the things I play, what limits my list design and creativity. And there's times where I go outside that I go outside of that, I guess that box I've made for myself of what works and what I'm going to get mileage out of to just try something new. Like one of my battle reports is I put the Regalia of the Empire on a water mage and then put the water mage in a unit of household guard. just to heal the household guard, and that they could never be broken, so I could always heal them and never lose the mage. Except like the household guard's durability, they would just lose too much stuff when they got hit by a hard attack. And the water mage wasn't healing enough to bring them all back. What's fine, because you guys wanted to balance out healing so it wasn't like ridiculous, and I totally get that. So it's kind of like, okay, I came out of my box of tools of stuff that I use when I want to win the game to try something else, and it like didn't work out. So like, I don't know, maybe I'm like finding a little bit of I don't want to call it list stagnation, but I'm looking for more tools. But I also know in a war game, not everything has to be the competitive best. So it's this weird balancing act. Like recently, Imperial Ranger Corps, I've been playing a lot with them, and I might have to not play with them because I'm playing into Dweg recently a bunch, and I need the armor-piercing one of more Merc crossbows to deal the damage. And even though Imperial Ranger Corps have the higher volley than anything else besides Veterans Hunter Cadre and 100 Kingdoms, they don't have that armor pierce, and you feel it. So it's kind of like, okay, I need to take this tool. So, like, I don't know if I'm even explaining myself very well here, but it's like it's a bunch of things that I'm starting to find with list building of what I'm grabbing for and why I'm doing it, what's meta dependent. But I have decided what it actually is. It's that there is Barrage 3, and there's only Barrage 3 on every 100 Kingdoms range option. And I just want to see a 4 in my life, please. Please, God, give me a 4 on something. I look at all the other range shooting from the other factions. They have 4s and 5s and 6s, and I'm like, please. I'm tired of shooting at 3 shots a stand.
I feel you. So you're finding that it's like once you find what works for you, it's hard to branch out.
Yeah, and like there's times where I'm like, I'm gonna put my stuff to the side that I normally play and play something else. Like sometimes I do it for the channel because it's like I want to show off other things 100 Kingdoms has. Sometimes it's I want to test myself out as a player and not rely on things that that I know work, and so that I can experience more and develop new tactics and technology. Like I'm going to use the word technology, but new tactics and strategies within my faction by playing these other things, because maybe there's something in there that I haven't opened up and realized yet that I'm going to bring into my toolkit as stuff I normally reach for when I build lists. Like, yeah.
No, fair. Perfect.
Like,
no, thank you for this feedback.
Yeah, no problem. Here's one. Due to the changes in the tournament scenario packet, and because the scenarios are like closer to each other, I kind of talked to the wonderful German lady Hannah, who is the Queen of 100 Kingdoms, and you have to use her full title every time, or else she'll kill you. Basically, I'm not taking men-at-arms anymore as an objective scorer because the scenarios are closer together, so I don't need back-end scoring. So I can change those points from back-end scoring to be an anvil, take a hit regiment, to more forward-facing work regiments, as in more stands for something that already does damage, or like warmer crossbows for range damage. So I'm looking less at men-at-arms than I did before.
Okay.
And there's I don't really see anything wrong with that, because there's still people playing at like 1,500 points. There's still people playing the old scenario packet. There's still people playing the scenarios out of the box, and I'm never gonna I'm not gonna say like shit on this regiment where it's like this one's completely unplayable trash. No, it has a purpose. It's just the current shift in scenario is kind of taking their purpose away. What was to sit on objectives, be a cheap mainstay, You can tell me if I'm wrong. I don't really care. Or mind. I would like to be told I'm wrong because then I can hear other people's opinions. But they're cheap. They're a mainstay. They sit on objectives really well. They can anvil for like one turn, or they can be a speed bump / pinner if something's coming at you. They kind of had those roles to them. And now with the change to scenario, what's going to scenario defines list building. So so I'm kind of seeing them being removed from my list because of that.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand, and yeah, scenarios do indeed affect list building, and it is true that ultimately my dream is to have a variable enough tournament scenario pack in which you build lists at your own risk. It's going to be better when going into certain scenarios. It's going to be worse when going into others. But yeah, scenario packs are a great drive of balance and a great drive of making people not skew towards a certain thing. But yeah, no, I do appreciate the feedback, and and you can be as always email me and ask questions, tell me this and this sucks and this other thing sucks. So I'm always open to that, and I'm always I love when feedback is like constructive, no matter how passionately it comes in, because the truth is, and sometimes I tell that to people who feel bad after they send me something that they feel they were a little bit too passionate, is that people are never passionate about things they don't care about. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Oh yeah.
you've never heard a person being like super passionate about something they don't give a dime right about. So for me, right off the bat, when I see a person being very passionate about something and giving feedback on it, for me, that tells me immediately, okay, this person likes the game. This isn't just a random person that is, just doesn't care. So I always read it from that perspective when I get feedback. And then of course, when it's constructive and when people go through
Like explain it.
they explain it, yeah, it
Yeah.
helps. Then we do suffer the problem of having communities playing wildly different. So sometimes I have to sometimes feedback is excellent and they're absolutely right. Very often I am in this hard position to explain that, well, that a person's meta is not a very good indicator of how the game is played, and therefore how they play. For example, I might be let's say opening a big bag kind of worms here, but for example, Hannah's Goblin list.
Oh, don't worry.
Yeah.
Have you watched any BonkTable?
Yeah, like the thing is that like
Oh no.
that list. I mean, that list is obviously is a solid list, but it wouldn't go into the final tables in, let's say, LVO or Adepticon.
No, it is designed for like specific scenarios, what are like no kill point scenarios. What I have noticed, you removed a bunch of them in the new scenario pack, what I'm very happy about, because one of the things like playing 100 Kingdoms is that a lot of your cheaper options are pretty fragile, so they just die, which just feeds your opponent's points, and it's like, oh god.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad a lot of that's gone.
Yeah. So like it really has to do with the it really has to do with the meta, and like for example, I was hearing this group that were telling me, Dwegs on September, right?
Mhm.
September Dwegs are just absolutely weak. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, how come? Like you're saying this because like, oh, actually, I don't really like Dwegum, but what I do like is Warhammer Fantasy, like dwarves. So I don't use any magic. I just use
Oh
them. I'm like, what?
no.
And I'm like, okay. I'm like, I understand what you're saying, but if you're role playing a faction from a different game, you're probably not really getting a lot of mileage out of what you're playing, and maybe this is why you're not, you're not performing very well. But like, it's very hard for me to buff a regimen based on this very niche, like, way of playing the Drugo.
Yeah, no, like I believe Mike and I we did the after, like, you know, the changes episode, and we talked about it and really looked at it, and I was really like, I was like, okay, you know, I like a lot of Dwaycom changes, and I looked at Magma, and I'm like, okay, there's something going on here with Magma. I really like it. Is it enough? Is it enough range? Like, you know, I had all these questions of like, will it perform so that Dwaycom is not nerfed into the ground from all these changes, but is it like better or not? I don't even want to say better, but like, is it on par with Fire? Like, will people pull away from the Fire Wizard to take the Magma Wizard? And my local Bailey, who is playing a bunch of Dwaycom and is running 2 Magma Wizards, and what did we do? I think my latest game is actually against him, but he's pulling upon his War Machine experience with Arc Nodes and how the Heralds of Magma work, and he's just bouncing fucking Pyroclasts all over the goddamn place, and I'm losing my crossbows left and right. So I'm like, yeah, Dwayg is fine. They're not top dog anymore, but they're not weak, and they also now have a really interesting trick with the Magma Wizard. Like, it's very hard to hide from this thing. What I do like. Like, I like those weird angles and stuff. Like, it's part of my background.
It's important that you're saying this, because it really has to do with the way that a person approaches the game, and your friends and your experience is very important, into helping you seeing that. But it's also very important, a lot of people don't have that same, let's say, background, and so they see the games completely different.
Yeah.
Ultimately, ultimately, very often I'm faced with a problem of trying to explain that, you're telling me this one thing, but it's very difficult for me to help you and satisfy that need, because in reality, that regimen that you think is incredibly powerful is actually not really powerful elsewhere, or like a specific build is really dominating your local meta, because you might be not sure how to fight against them yet. The most discussions I've had like that is about the Old Dominion, where a certain meta will tell you that they're absolutely incredibly strong, and another will tell you that they're absolutely incredibly weak, and yet the reality is that they are somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And we did that Old Dominion episode, and it was like, we kind of did that one because people really liked the Dweg one, and they were asking for another one, and I looked at the factions, and I was like, every other faction's basically fine. There's little stuff, but like, that's going to be part of everything. Old Dominion is the one I'm like, I view from my perspective is on the bottom, and I wanted to dig deep and find out like why that is, and I asked a bunch of people from the BonkTable Discord like their opinion on it, and I read it out for basically verbatim of what they were saying to like dig in and discuss those points, because it's like, if I'm not the only one, then what's going on? Like, and sometimes like you learn about the meta a bit more. Like, there was one guy from a different meta who was like, I'm having a really bad problem with like Old Dominion, like no resolve is awful, this shouldn't be I'm like, yeah, like, what are you playing? Like, are you playing into Old Dominion's game plan of just like regiments smashing up, fighting, you're killing their legionnaires, giving them dark power points, and then their heavy hitters are coming in and smashing you? Or are you not playing their game and shooting them, moving around, not having fights with them, trying to find angles to go for their tougher, heavy hitting stuff to kill it, and then killing their legionnaires who aren't really doing the damage portion of it? And that's how you win? Like, it's kind of like, what kind of level of strategy are you putting into the game to win for you?
So here I'll tell you this bit, and I will to wrap the conversation a little bit, as for me to get ready for or to go to bed and for tomorrow. But for the people that have been following us for like 3.5 hours. I'm gonna give you like a little bit of a spoiler in this sense, like a very complete spoiler, like I've never done before. So as a thing for that I've never done it so far. So let's see how it goes. I will tell you something that we're playtesting right now for Old Dominion.
I'm shaking.
This is not what I'm going to tell you is not final, and it's only a small portion out of a larger context. So it's important to remember. But here it is. Right now, Legionnaires are a tax. I'm not afraid to call out things the way they are, and so Legionnaires need to find their own spot in the faction. If you make them more defensive, well, essentially they're Praetorians. It doesn't really make sense. If you make them more offensive, well, they're kind of like Athanati, so that doesn't really make sense either. They have to find their own way. So what if they get their standard bearer for free? They go down to about 100 points, but not no change to the points per stand. They lose Phalanx as a Memory of Old, but instead they gain a Memory of Old ability that says that their command stand counts as 2 additional stands for the purposes of seizing objective zones. And then add to that a rule that's called, let's say, Forced March, whereas the second march, the standard bearer doesn't give a +1 inch to the movement, but it gives a +2 instead. Now take that and combine it with our beloved Minifridge. And the Minifridge tells you that from now on, when you're seizing, first of all, it's no longer 1 per army, and it tells you that when you're seizing an objective zone, you're also producing a dark power token to the pool of your choice.
Holy shit! Oh my. That works, because now, so baseline, gut reaction, here you go. Write the step now. This, yeah, no, I'm fucking with you. I really like these changes right off the bat, because it puts them into that chaff section of they're not too they're not too expensive anymore, so that you can still buy all the fancy things that you want to have dark power on. They're no longer going towards a defensive niche, but you're also forcing your opponent to kill them. And if they don't kill them, you're generating dark power if you put them on the zones. Because usually to get your opponent to kill them is you just throw them on the zone anyway to kind of be like, kill me if you want the zone. And they'd be like, yeah, okay, I'll finally kill you. But now, even if your opponent doesn't interact with them and is instead going for other things and trying to play, I guess, like the long game, what usually Old Dominion is good at, you're generating that point like that. That really puts them into like the primary dark power pool generators, and I wouldn't be surprised if people stop taking a hero deacon because they can get those points through putting them on objective zones.
Or I think that, or I would say that,
or they do
like
both?
I said. No, I'm not gonna spoil as much now, but here's the thing. Of course, like what I said is that these are changes. These are just a single 2 changes, part of a larger, context of things. But one of the great things, in my opinion, based on that, let's say, thing with the Legionnaires, is that now the hero deacon can actually also come in. They can also produce dark power, and now when you want to go into, let's say, Bucephaly, you don't have to buy something that is considered to be a tax before you buy that.
It has a use, and I like that. And
so, indirectly, the hero deacons restricted also get a little bit more value, because the thing that unlocks them is not a tax anymore.
Mm-hmm. I really do like that, actually. Like, I'm gonna go like message my Old Dominion local and be like, hey, you can stop crying now, and be happy, because potential changes are coming, and that it's actually being looked at to help you out. Because I believe one of the things we talked about was that climb of dark power pool, and how you kind of like how you have to kind of like take legionnaires to die to generate enough so that you can actually start fighting at tier 2 and tier 3. Because it's like one of the things I noticed was like Old Dominion really can't fight until they get to tier 2, but they can start winning at tier 3, and like getting there was kind of the issue.
Yeah, and the final one other very small thing is that Blasphemous Soma, the army special rule, is not going to require the warlord to be on the battlefield anymore.
It just happens.
Yeah, essentially you get about a couple more Dark Power tokens in the game.
That's really good as well, because like I know some people would want to put their like make the Ziliarch a warlord and then put him with Varangian Guard, and then he's like not coming out until turn 3, so he's like they're missing out on that, and that's a really nice change. And like I've said it before, but I will tell you in person or through the internet. I want to give you props for your changes in game design, because one thing I've noticed as you and your team have been making this game and making updates is that a lot of the time not a lot, but like, yeah, I'm gonna say a lot. A lot of the time you don't go for the obvious solution to a problem, like adjusting a stat here and there, adjusting a number. Like you don't go for the easy stuff. You really look at it and you really break down how this can be better for the game itself overall. And you start giving it interesting rules and how it plays, just like this bit of playtest spoiler. And one of the ways that I really noticed it kind of like firsthand was the September update with Dweghome, with the Magma School changing so dramatically and how it interacts with everything now. Like I really like that because it makes you feel like an active player. And how the heralds, the officers, interact with their various fire magma schools as well.
Yeah, like I'll tell you, this is like I will always critique all of the designs that we write. I will be the first one to see if that something doesn't work. Like, I don't care. Like, I don't feel shame to admit that I'm wrong and that I have to go in a different direction. And even if that means that there needs to be a bigger change or redesign or re-envisioning, I'd rather do it now. Get the complaints how much the change was, and do it for the sake of the game being a better game. Like I'd rather embarrassing myself a little bit if it means making the game better than trying to save face and only do minor updates just for the sake of not changing too much when it's really needed. So yeah, it's always going to be if a re-envisioning, a readjustment is needed, then this is what's going to happen.
Well, it really shows that you care about the game. It shows you care about the work you do for the game. So I'm really happy, and also like I want to say kudos to you because you're doing good work, because more and more people are playing your game, enjoying your game, and liking it from yourself and the rest of the Para Bellum staff. Like I'm always excited for when an update comes out, because it's always like something. There's something new I either get to play with or play into.
Thank you. And that was my little, new kind of spoiler for those that have stayed with us for 3.5 hours.
Oh my god.
I got to say, I really enjoyed this.
Thank you. I also really enjoyed this, and I would love for you to come back with Stravos so we can torture him.
Perfect. We'll make sure it happens.
Perfect. So with that, should we sign off so that you can go to bed and I can go find dinner?
I think it's time, yes.
Okay. Thank you everyone for listening. I hope everyone has a great day. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Leandros.